What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Kind of Funny podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Greg Miller, alongside the producer/seducer, Nick Scarpino, in slacks.
Slacks, no less.
I feel like it's not a completely unheard of look by any stretch of the imagination.
Sure.
But today, when I saw you in them, when we were doing the basketball draft, I was like, this is a look I don't get often from you.
This is a look I don't wear often. This is my first time wearing slacks in a very long time, probably since you want to say like college, maybe even pre-college. I think college was like cargo pants was the closest thing I came to this.
High school's pre-college?
What's that?
Did you say pre-college?
Just meaning like before,
Just like before college.
General.
Oh, okay.
Not like
Because I have pictures of myself when I was like 4 in slacks.
Oh.
You know,
Okay,
like my mom would be like, "You're going
Elena
to church."
Scarpino is
put
huge
the
on
slacks
slacks.
on.
We're going to Sears. We're taking the family photo.
BC.
And I'm pretty sure I
Before
wore
college.
this color of a chino or docker for, important events. High school graduation, you go to JCPenney's or the Macy's, you get the dockers. You wear them one time. They're super uncomfortable because they didn't have your size because you're just a little too
Husky. You had to go to the
overweight.
Husky.
Yeah,
Had to go to the Husky section.
But yeah, I got a pair of pants. I like them. You know what I like about them? Can I be real with you?
Yeah.
Can I be real with you?
They look Ghostbuster
Well,
covers?
first off, they're a little bit more roomy, which I like.
Sure.
They're not like my standard
That's
skinny
strong.
jean for that doink doink. But second off, I could put my hand in my pocket again. Like this.
You couldn't put your hand in your pocket in your jeans?
Well, I mean, stand up, put your hand in your pocket, like casually.
Casually. You have to look
Casually.
casual, though, Greg.
Yeah, you already missed it twice. There you go. See, you already missed it
You
twice.
already missed it twice.
Now let me show you how
Yeah,
casual
let's
this
see Nick
is.
do it. This is going to be good.
Wow.
Wow,
Yeah,
so
okay.
easy.
Yeah,
too.
you're right. That was way
That was
easier.
really
I
casual.
did get caught on my little pocket. You're right.
Very effortless.
On stage, I'm a pocket guy now.
Oh,
I'm a hand in the
that
pocket
makes
guy
so
now.
much sense when you're up there with the
Yeah.
microphone.
Microphone. What am I going to do with the other hand? Some people put it behind their back. Some people get expressive with it. I'm a hand in the pocket man, Andy.
I like it.
I like that it's just for the bit. It's for the act.
No, I actually honestly just wanted to buy bigger pants because I'm tired of. I keep getting skinny jeans and I love them. I still have them, but they shrink and you get to the point where the skinny jeans just wrap around your calves like an anaconda.
What
I just need a little bigger. jean now.
it's always in the worst possible scenario where I'm already tired, I'm already hot or whatever, and you got to peel the jeans off. They're like on you. You know what I mean? Jeez.
Peel them off.
But it makes me think of fighting the symbiote. You know what I mean? Like I'm fucking Peter Parker. Tim's hitting the bell. They can't fight us both together, Tim.
Can't do it.
Forbes 30
Can't
under
do
30,
it.
aka the second best baby blues in San Francisco, aka the I voted man.
I did vote. I did vote. Also, two things I want to say. One, I appreciate that Nick now, like you've been doing this for a while now, but I feel like in the last
Podcasting?
year or so, your stand-up comedy has like, I'm going to say punished you into dressing better. Where it's
Yes,
like
it has.
you reflecting on yourself and watching your footage back, you're like, I need to look better up on stage. And it works. You do.
Thank
I
you.
feel like you've stepped up the fashion game to a point that you're like, you look good. And I feel like people respect that about you.
Thank you. Someone last night at Punchline told me I looked dapper. I
Sick.
think was the word she used, or old. I can't remember. It was one
Or
of
old.
those. Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun.
And my other thing is, I've never worn slacks once in my life. Not a single time.
What?
I
You're
didn't
a
go to
liar.
any Catholic school. I didn't do any of that stuff. Why would I have ever?
There's
So you
never
never had-
been an event, an assembly where you're winning something or...
I wear like dress pants.
That's
Wait,
true.
Okay, well,
Wait, hold on, I'm confused.
No,
Like
there's
black
a
dress
difference
pants?
between like a dress pant and like a khaki. Like this is more like a casual pant. He's saying like I wear a dress
I've never
pant.
worn a khaki.
like a docker or a khaki or
Docker?
a chino
Nah.
or
You didn't work at Target?
Didn't work at Target. No.
Huh.
yeah, I worked at Best Buy. I had to.
Yeah, never worked at Best Buy.
Turn on the fun, Best Buy. Bet you didn't think I knew that jingle anymore, but I still do.
I didn't even know that was a jingle.
You're such an
Ring
idiot.
no
I hate,
bells.
I hate your era of Best Buy. You know what I mean?
You were in the worst era of Best Buy. You don't
We're
even
in
know
it
what it
right
was
now.
like.
You're in
He's
the-
the
you're in the Saved
Hispanic
by the Bell,
heartthrob
the
Texas
new
Street
class.
Latino. He clicking heads and ripping them to shreds. The globe trotting, headshot, and 3-point shooting, rootin' tootin' Nitro rival from Twitch. Nitro
Yeah,
rival
that
from
works.
Twitch.tv. Andy Cortez.
A little bit sleepy, but I was able to wake up in time. All thanks to my Nintendo Alarmo.
Oh,
Shut the
Jesus.
fuck up.
Yeah.
No way,
Oh
Andy.
yeah. Oh yeah. Spent $100.
Why?
Spent $100.
And it wasn't easy, right? Like you needed to go out of your way to get this thing. Like they weren't just selling it anywhere.
No, I just went to the link. What are you talking about?
Oh, really?
Yeah, went to the link.
Oh, okay. I saw people having trouble trying to get one.
Oh, really? No. I mean,
Wow.
maybe you needed your Nintendo online account to be signed in, but that was it.
Interesting. But what made you do this? Because like that's unhinged behavior? Is it for the memes?
Just curious. Just curious. There's curiosity to
What
kill
else
the
you
cat,
gonna
Nick. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a Nintendo
Not buy
alarm.
this $100 alarm clock?
It's beautiful.
Andy makes Twitch money, all right?
Nintendo alarm clock. You plug
got
it into
Link and a
USB.
chocobo.
You link it up to your Wi-Fi if you want to download more themes. You can randomize what game you want to wake up to.
Yeah.
And then, Nick, get this. You put it down and you need to test it out
Andy
first.
actually does have a problem waking up, so if this helps him.
I had just finished playing basketball, so I was like too sweaty to test it out. It was like, now get in your bed and pretend you're asleep. I was like, well, no, not right now. We'll save this for later. But what you do is you angle it at your bed because there's a sensor, probably a camera. Maybe it watches me cranking it. I don't know.
I'm sure it does.
But it's like, all right,
Judges you.
pretend you're getting out of bed. So you have to pretend to get out of bed
no Nintendo
to like
Labo.
show the sensor what this looks like, right?
calibrating.
Yeah, you're sort of calibrating the experience. And
Pretend
then
you're banging out right now.
this morning I wake
Your
up.
massive schlong.
This morning I wake up, chain chomp, just wop, 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 just going nuts with the Mario 64 music playing. It's going nuts, Nick. And it's a big icon on your screen, and I look at it and I have to kind of like move your arm to wave it away, and then it gets smaller and it goes away. But doing that is like it's getting you active to be like shut the fuck up, and it's kind of waking you up. So you could choose like steady as like a slower way, so it might wake you up. It's like some slow sounds of Hyrule.
Link, it's time to wake
The
up.
sun has risen, Link. And you could do all sorts of stuff like that, or you could get like, I want to wake up with some juice. Put on some Splatoon music and let me like start splatting all over the place. Yeah. And so the more extreme version is the one that's like a lot more aggressive, and it's going to be louder. It's going to be crazier. Yeah.
I'm shocked that Tim doesn't appreciate this. I'm shocked that you don't have one of these.
I mean,
It's not white. It doesn't come in all white.
there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot about it that I'm just like, to say I appreciate it. I appreciate Nintendo's weirdness. That's probably the only thing I appreciate about it. Like, there's nothing about this that would make me want to buy it besides just the meme of it. But even that, I'm like, it's not worth it. $100 is a lot of money for this thing.
It's a lot of money.
And I'm good with my alarm system.
You know what the
happy.
biggest problem with
The
it
iPhone.
is a core problem with Nintendo. Stick with me. They don't have in-game achievements. Now, if PlayStation sold me a clock that gave me trophies, oh fuck it, yeah, go ahead. What do you want to see, PlayStation? What do I need to calibrate this clock to in my bedroom?
I
You'll
like
get
that.
it.
That'd be
You'll get
really
it.
cool.
How do you like? Would one of the trophies be like you have to like do it, and you do it once a week? You get a trophy.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah.
Okay, how hard do you think it would be to convince Jen that that's a trophy that you need?
Why'd you
Like,
say
it's-
do
it's
it like a 12-year-old?
Do it. I think I mean, she always wants to be part of my activities. You know what I mean? She wants.
This is a great way for us to bond.
She doesn't want me to play more video games. So if I
No,
can
you don't
bring
need to
that,
play
you
more
know what I
video
mean? That's what they should do. If there was in-game achievements, if it was giving me something,
Yeah.
if it links to the Switch 2, has
We'll have
some
to
kind
wait
of
and
thing.
see.
It is such a low resolution screen.
It's Nintendo.
It is
And it's not circular, right? It's a square screen.
Yeah, it's a square screen on a circular face. So low res looking, like just one of the worst LCD panels you've ever seen in your life. It looks awful.
hate
dude.
Can I ask a hypothetical?
Yeah,
It's a
man.
personal question,
Yeah,
so
yeah, what's
feel
up?
free if it makes you uncomfortable
Yeah.
to not answer
Go
because it's kind of inappropriate. Do you feel like if you had a lady caller over at night,
Mhm.
do you think that this would help?
Oh, I'm throwing it
solidify
out the window.
Okay.
If the situation ever arose, absolutely
like look
not.
over there, and then it just goes
Yeah,
into the
no.
drawer.
I mean,
Okay.
I totally.
Gee, is this the thing that tips your room past the breaking point, though?
Oh,
Like, I mean
man.
this with all love and respect, because I'm one as well. Like,
You talk about
you're a
skeletons in your
huge fucking
closet.
dork.
Talk
Like,
about skeletons in your closet. They're all the Nendoroid toys I have in my
Yeah.
closet, like lining just the top.
you got your chibis on your shelf and all that.
No, I'd say the stream room's more like that. My bedroom is just like it sometimes
Like
looks like a
Dungeon.
war zone.
Chilly.
It's sometimes and then every other weekend I do clean it and it looks really nice. But for the most part, it looks like a war zone where I get home from work, I know I'm going to stream, I take my hoodie off and I throw it there, and then it just becomes a pile of hoodies that I eventually hang up by the end of the week, and then rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat.
Here's something we should do.
Yeah.
All right, we should buy one of those cameras that can make a photo or whatever. Like it'll make
Andy already
One of
doesn't
those
like this
cameras
idea.
that
Where
can
is it
make a
going?
photo?
Yeah. I like those cameras.
I like when they do that.
We can't all go to Andy's house.
No.
We can't all go into his room.
He
But
won't
through
let
the
us.
power of virtual reality, we could.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
get one of those like ball camera things you take that then could just make it in VR, so I could experience your room that way and your stream room.
I mean, look, there's several times where people have asked, like, Andy, show us a stream room setup. There is no amount of money I would accept to do that. That's not an exaggeration. Like, I'm so embarrassed by the state of my living.
Cables or
Cables, just mess. I'm so cluttery. I've always been cluttery. You see my desk. Imagine that just over a whole room. Like, I am so cluttery. And then sometimes pop an Adderall on a Saturday. It's like clean it all up in 9 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh shit, this looks amazing. But I'm just very, very, I've always been cluttery. That's always, my parents I've always been like, we'll deal with that. If that's the worst thing about him, we can deal with that. That's my mom would always tell my dad. My dad's
Josh
like,
G says, why can't there be a Kind of Funny podcast from Andy's stream room? And there's a great idea. We do that and Bear cooks us dinner.
You're really just trying to be Snowbike Mike right now. We're like doing this.
It's one of those, like, I'm not interested enough on the rare occasion I drop Barrett off to like come inside. But I'd love to see what these rooms look like.
I would love to do, I think it would be cool if we did a series of Kind of Funny podcasts that were like remote place, like,
sure,
podcast,
but outside.
Our backyard would just like, the dirt back there. Lulu keeps on going back there.
She coming
guest
out,
appearance?
You're gonna body
coming
in
out
there.
dirty.
Oh, Lulu would not be cool with with any of you all. If you were like, she barely became okay with me about like 6 months ago, and she still growled at me like 2 months ago. But
Well, that's gonna happen occasionally.
yeah, but any human being like it's a bad situation.
If you didn't know, everybody,
She's
this is
the
the Kind of
cutest. I
Funny
love her so
podcast.
much.
Each and every week, 4, sometimes 5 best friends gather on this table, each coming to talk about whatever they want to talk about. If you want to talk with us, you should be in that live chat, just like Eric is, Taylor is, and Madeline Stanley are. Of course, you can be in that live chat if you were a Kind of Funny member for $10, either on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames or patreon.com/kindoffunny. You can support our 11-person small business that gives you live entertainment all day long. You'd get all the shows ad-free. You'd get good karma for supporting us. You'd get the ability to watch podcasts like these in the afternoon live as we record them privately. And of course, you'd get a daily dose of me in a series I call Gregway. Thank you very much, Nick. I appreciate your support. Of course, no bucks tossed away, no big deal. YouTube.com/kindoffunnygames and podcast services around the globe the very next business day for a free episode with some ads and some good times. Of course, we couldn't have these shows and have good times without you, our Patreon producers. So thank you, Drummer Boy, Casey Andrew, James Hastings, Nathan Lamoth, and Carl Jacobs. Today, we're brought to you by New World Eternum and Phasmophobia, but we'll begin with what is and forever will be the topic of the show.
I do like that Eric Broman said everybody gets a can of chili.
That's how you get it out. Finally.
We are 1 week away from the presidential election here in these United States.
It doesn't feel real. Like, it still feels like we're in the thick of it and it's just getting started. And like, I don't know what that is. Maybe
I don't like how fast time goes.
Yeah, maybe we're just getting older and that's how that works. But I don't think that is the case here. Like, I think that just we've gotten so used to there always being something else and there just being like crazy headline after crazy headline. And just where we're at now, like the build up to this election, the different debates that they had, the different public appearances and all of it, I feel like we're just starting to get started, and it's like, oh no, we're about this thing. It's go time. Yeah, like
well, it's crazy to me because it feels like, I think part of the reason why I feel the same way you do is because it feels like we're repeating history. It feels like it was 10 years ago or however long ago it was. What, 8 years ago?
Which one are you on?
When he first ran
2016.
against Hillary. 2016. Everything in the world sort of feels like that a little bit. And I was talking to Dee about this the other day too. She was like, we're not regressing, but because things go in phases, like we're now like watching TV again that has ads because we don't want to pay for Amazon Prime ad list. So now I'm watching TV with ads again. I've got YouTube TV. We took a cab the other day. I was like, what's happening? Daredevil's coming back on Netflix. And I'm like, or Disney Plus, right? But it feels like it's that era again. So it's tripping me out to look at all like, I don't want to use the doom and gloom parlance, but like those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it. It feels like we're repeating history to some degree.
I also think it's, the fact that it's just an onslaught all the time. You can't escape this at any point on anything. You're listening to the Kind of Funny podcast and we have to talk about the election again. Like, it's everywhere because it's so goddamn important. But on top of that, I think it's ridiculous to think about the timetable of this and going to Kevin's baby shower and having the breaking news in the car that Biden was stepping aside and Kamala was going to step up, right? And then to think about how long it's been since that happened. And I think with that being such a truncated race of Kamala Harris entering, grabbing Tim Walz, like it seems even more, how is it almost over already? When in the same breath, I'm so ready for it to be over one way or the other.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I think that is the Kamala coming in officially so late in the game. I think that is why subconsciously to me it feels like, oh, we must just be getting started. But obviously just things happen the way that they did. So everything was not necessarily truncated, but just like our time with her in the limelight of being a part of this was a lot more condensed. So I'm just expecting more. But yeah, obviously I am ready for it all to be over. And I feel like the greatest concern is that, next week's the election, but maybe not the greatest concern. There's a lot of concerns.
I was gonna say,
a major
so
concern,
many great
a major
concerns.
Major concern is like it's not over next week.
No.
It's like next week is kind of when just the next phase begins, and like that next phase can go many different ways, and like depending on who wins, who loses, or how that seems to even be going, scary is not being dramatic, I would say.
Sure. Yeah, 100%. You know, it was 2 weeks ago when the Kamala ads, me, Andy, and Joey started posting on the internet or whatever. And when I posted if you didn't know, if you're not following me on Instagram, come on. But the Harris for President campaign had hit us up because remember back in the day in 2020, me and Gary Whitta did the tour on Kind of Funny Twitch of Biden's Animal Crossing Island, right? Because of course, the Kind of Funny best friend works on the campaign over there and wanted to diversify how they were reaching out to people. And so this time around, same exact thing. And I was like, let's get Vice President Harris on the podcast. Like, probably can't do that. Like, damn it. I was like, what about Governor Walz? And they're like, maybe, but probably not. Damn.
You're like, what's the lowest level person we could get on this podcast? That's
exactly.
Going to be in the administration.
We can give you the Pennsylvania head office intern.
Walz is going to be on the Lebtard show.
That's awesome. So maybe there's still hope for us?
Maybe there's still hope.
Okay, great.
Even though they're much bigger than
But then they passed it off with like, well, we are trying to get gamers. We are trying to do all this stuff. And like, we're running ads in the battleground states to kind of answer some of the calls that have been made, the baseless claims by Trump and his cohorts. So they reached out to us and they were like, would you guys record basically a Kind of Funny podcast, 30 minutes of why you, Joey, and Andy are voting for Kamala Harris. We did. We sent it to them. They edited it together. They ran them as ads and are running them as ads right now. And then me and Paris did one last week as well. So look for that soon.
It really just sounded like if you were to mute everybody else talking and it was just me, it sounded like the way I complain to my family members about some other of my family members of like, why the fuck are these, like, what's going through these people's brains? You know, like it just really like the way I kind of just started ranting in the way that like I talk about some of my Theos who are voting for Trump. I was like, fucking why, bro? He doesn't care. Anyway, it's funny like to think about how it felt less of like a conversation of just like I got to get this shit out.
Well, I mean, again, that's kind of what this podcast is going to be, I think, right? It's a check-in with all of us after we had done the whole, what we did, Trump got shot, and then the next week, believe it or not, was Biden steps aside or whatever we called it, right? And we talked about it there of how we felt. And so now 1 week to go, right? And maybe even later when you listen to this, a check-in on what's happening, where it's going. And to your point, Andy, I think that's the toughest part about this entire situation. And the fact that it's this fucking close, according to polls, is like, I just cannot fathom the side that looks at Donald Trump and his plan in quotes and goes, that's my guy. That's the thing. That's what, like, there's concepts of a plan. You know what I mean? And it's like, we can, in last election, when we did the episode that was please vote for Joe Biden, it was very much all of us having a similar conversation and diving into it. But it's just like to be here again, but to have it be so close, but to have it be like so little of this is run on policy. Like, it's not the policy issues that you hear people talk about at all, right? It's just personality based. And it's like, what about this convicted felon found liable for sexual assault is the one you go, no, I don't believe any of that stuff. Like, that is fucking crazy. It's actually, of course, haunting to go back to the Joe Biden episode from 4 years ago and hear me read through, these are the signs of fascism. And I was like, that's who he is. That's what this is. And now that actually be a campaign part for the Harris campaign of like, he's a fascist. His Donald Trump's former advisors and colleagues come out and be like, no, he's a fascist. Like, it's crazy that people still can't see that. It's insane that he is such a good salesman that he can convince all of these people that everyone else is wrong, that they're so jilted by the media and journalists and fake news and celebrities that you can sit there and be like, have we not all watched these Netflix cult documentaries? I feel like I watched 19 during COVID, and it's like, that's getting you away from everyone you love and be like, I'm the only one telling the truth is like cult part number one.
Yeah, I mean, this is the unfortunate aspect of Trump, is that it's just the cult of personality, right? It's just that people rally behind him, I think, just because they like the person that he allows them to be, which is a person who is not beholden to anyone else. He's a person who can break the law or can pretty much do whatever he wants to do and can't be told by, for all intents and purposes, a progressive or a person on the left. You can't tell them what to do. They don't want to be told what to do. And I think that is paramount for all of his followers. I don't think it has anything to do with policy. I don't think it has anything to do with politics. I think it's all just that raging battle that you see on Twitter every time you log on, and that's really all it is. Because I can't fathom that. Candidly, on either side, I don't think it's and I think the left is guilty of it as well. Is that you just sort of, it becomes a team sport at a certain point, 100%. And it becomes less about the minutia of what people stand for or what the politics are or what they might be doing with the Supreme Court or abortion rights or Israel-Palestine. It becomes, well, Trump's just the guy that will allow me to say whatever words I'm not allowed to say anymore and get away with whatever things that I probably haven't even fucking done. But if I do something, you know what I mean? It just becomes that. It becomes a big FU to any sort of progressive society. And it's unfortunate to me because it really just sort of makes the importance of it very, very narrow. It really, I think it makes people's vision very, very narrow when it comes to like the consequences that we've already seen come from a first-term presidency with Donald Trump, but the potential consequences of a second term could be crazy. And so, for anyone it's tough because people that are probably listening to this podcast, I'm sure there's some of them that are thinking about voting for Trump, but for the most part, we're probably preaching to the converted, for lack of a better term again, because I think a lot of people are probably Democrats or progressives that are listening to this. So it does suck that we're sort of, I don't know if we're able to get the message out to people of like, hey, just think a little bit through some of these things. Really listen to what this guy's saying. And look, if you are like, hey, I align 100% with this guy, then, there's not much I can say to you other than you might want to take a look at kind of what that means.
Sure. And I respect that. I think back in, the 2020 podcast where I was pleased to vote for Joe Biden, to be clear, please vote for Kamala Harris. I think I agree with you. I doubt we have many people who are like, I'm a Trump supporter and I'm open to having my mind changed listening to this podcast. For me, it's more the people who are like, the two-party system's broken, or who cares about Kamala Harris, blah, blah, blah. The people who think sitting this one out is going to show the Democrats that they need real change or whatever. Like, I know that sucks. I wish that wasn't the case. I don't want to speak out of turn because I'm honestly not sure. For years, from when I registered at 18, and I think till now, but I'm not 1,000% sure, I was registered as independent. Because picking a party, I think, is such a dumb idea. Sadly, as we've gone, the Republican Party's just become fucking ghouls. So it's kind of like, well, fuck. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to vote blue down the line now because I am. Anybody who would align themselves with Trump, anybody who would be proud to say they're a Republican, I just can't get down with. I don't understand how you do that.
John Drake over the weekend put out a tweet that I keep referring to in conversations I'm having with people because I feel like it like succinctly explains how I feel about it better than I've ever been able to, which is given the situation that we have of it, it is a two-party system and you can vote for other people, but it's not going to have an effect in any major way. It's like taking a bus to your destination versus an Uber. You're not allowed to take the Uber this time. You have to take the bus. So which bus gets you closer to where you're trying to get? And I feel like that really is like a very good way of like, it's not going to get you where you're going, but if one's going the wrong way, like that's
that's politics in a nutshell, right? And that is unfortunate, but that is just a very adult way of looking at things, which is that there are things that I don't agree with. Any politician would say, right? They're just policies that I'm like, I fundamentally would disagree with that. But you're right. It has to do with like what are the things that you can live with, and what are the things that are just non-starters? And there's just nothing I've ever heard come out of Trump's mouth, and I'm like, yeah, that seems like something I can live with. That makes sense, right? It's completely lunacy, you know?
Yeah, and it's somehow getting worse a long time ago. Sorry, what I was trying to drive at. This is gonna be one of those kind of podcasts because I feel like honestly, it's more of a counseling session, just a chance to vent, right? Because Jen and I are definitely sick of having that wind down at the end of the day on the couch and be like, also, did you see and can you fucking believe in? Oh my god, blah 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 blah, right? But it's the idea of like it getting crazier every day. And there always being something else, right? And like this stuff out of the Madison Square Garden stuff yesterday with this comedian in Puerto Rico's island of trash, the jokes about the black guy in the audience. It's like, so I just can't fathom anyone looking at me and be like, this is my party. This is the guy. I've said, and back in 2020 when we did this, I remember us specifically talking about, and not even the episode, but the run up to it, right? Of like, listen, you might not be homophobic, you might not be a racist, you might not be a bigot, but if you're going to be a Republican and vote for Trump, you've decided those aren't deal breakers for you, right? Mm-hmm. And so to have it be so blatant now and so much crazier and so much more ramped up and have it be this close in polls and have people, my hope is, and I keep saying this, and I know it's just wishful thinking. I know it's wishful thinking, but right now, the hope is that we're going to have a reverse of 2016. Where if you remember in 2016, everybody's like, Hillary's going to clean this clock. Polls were like, she's going to fucking kick the shit up, yada, yada, yada. Trump wins. And it was after the fact, this whole thing of like, well, it turns out that people wanted to vote for Trump or either didn't get polled or just lied in their poll or whatever. So now my hope is, even though it looks like a dead heat, that there's just so many rational Americans who are looking at this and going like, oh, it's not even worth engaging. I did not enjoy those 4 years of Trump. He's clearly a psychopath, as I hear him saying all these horrible things. I'm going to vote for her and not, it's whatever. And we get a nice margin. I know.
I would love to believe that, but I do think there's a lot of, I think there's so many people who are closet Trump supporters who just don't want anyone to know it
anymore.
Well, no, that's the thing is that for the most part, I mean, there's a lot of people who are outwardly supporting him, but I do think there's a lot of people probably even in tech or in California. And granted, California is always going to go Democrat, but that are probably there, and I can't fathom why for the life of me. But I do think there's some weird dark place that he brings out in people that just makes them go, yeah, I'm gonna. It's like a kid. I'm gonna stick it to my parents.
Well, it's
the
whole thing,
for this guy.
And this is why he won in 2016. And again, before we really realized, and I should say before I really realized how fucking terrifying this individual was. Right, there was the idea of. And me being that person in up to 2016, 2015, whatever, of like, I'm so jaded with two-party politics. All these people are the same. Like, it's a slight variation of, I don't want to say blue or red because they're the same, but it's a slight variation of like light blue to royal blue or whatever. We're talking.
Clinton versus Bush. You were like the differences were closer.
And nothing's changing, and nothing's blah blah blah. And so like I, of course, would love a very breath of fresh air liberal president to step in, right? Like I went with everything that's happened and where clearly we were going back to the mat with Donald Trump. Yeah, Joe Biden, fucking get off your ass and expand the Supreme Court, codify Roe v. Wade. What the fuck are you doing? Do all these things that were far from center, right? That were going way left, that would have alienated a lot of older Democrats, but fuck them. You know what I mean? I understand that passion of wanting to see somebody shake it up. So when Trump showed up and was like, it all fucking sucks, I'm going to drain the swamp, blah, 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 I don't need to do this and I could cut that. I understand why that message was compelling to people. I am an outsider here to shake up the political institution. I get that. But then to see it and then to see January fucking 6th, you'd think that people would be like, not the way I wanted to shake it up maybe necessarily.
I guess that's the weird thing for me is that you see what the consequences are of like failure for him and how that can get violent very quickly. And you think, let's go down that road again. I don't understand it. Yeah. I don't understand why people would watch that day and go, oh, we can't ever have this happen again. Like, why would you not think that? And the fact that you see that and go, I definitely want to vote for this guy again. And let's set that up for maybe even a grander scale. Or, I mean, that could legitimately happen in a week. You don't know. Who knows? If he loses, it could be something crazier like that. I hope it doesn't, knock on wood. I hope everything is a smooth transition no matter what happens. But I just can't understand how people look at that and go, Yeah, that's the guy I'm going to vote for. Like the guy that didn't really do anything to stop it and kind of encouraged it.
Yeah.
And just waited a couple hours before he condemned it. And you're like, what are we doing? Why is that?
Yeah.
It's weird even the last like a week or two as the podcast circuit has kind of been going and you see where the different people are going. Like last night we saw Tim Waltz playing Crazy Taxi on Twitch and all that. And,
Hell yeah.
for whatever that'll do. But then seeing Trump obviously on the Undertaker podcast, which I was like, I listened to it just because I was like,
The Mark Calloway podcast.
Yeah, you're right. Because I was like,
WWE wants to separate themselves, or you can't use the Undertaker anymore.
I think it's
we're talking about the person, not the character here.
Oh,
Right.
But it is the idea of like, how do you separate a performer from their art and yada 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 and like blah blah. Sorry.
Yeah, but watching that podcast, I watched it all the way through, and then the Joe Rogan Trump podcast, I watched that all the way through.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. I can't bring myself to listen to it.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to hear. You know what I mean? I wanted to hear what was being said, how it was being said, and like just what it would even be like. And I cannot believe how much. I mean, the wrestling one is very simple because I understand that world so much better. But to see Trump come in and like off the rip, just start talking about the WrestleMania he was part of, and it was the biggest WrestleMania. The most money WrestleMania.
Yeah.
It's like,
and you're like, no.
Same lie he
Like,
says
I
every-
legitimately
you know what I mean? It's like
prove
one of
it's
those
not.
things where it's like, and wrestling obviously is what it is. But they are able to come up with stats and numbers and this and that all the time. I've never heard that about what was WrestleMania 24. Like I don't even fucking remember.
Yeah, it was
but
in
like,
the Mr. McMahon documentary. I forget that.
but like my point is, it's like he's just saying this stuff, and it's like no one's fact checking it. Not that it really matters, but it all goes back to the same concept of everything has to be the biggest, everything has to be the most people, everything, and it does become this sports game and like this, like again, professional sports game, professional entertainment. What am I messing up here? Sports entertainment. Thank you. Type thing of it feels more wrestling than it even does choose a team. Like Trump is now playing everybody as if there's characters at play, and like Elon is this character in this whole thing, coming out with the black hats and all this stuff, and then like
Goth Magnet.
it's goofy as hell. And then seeing him talk to, and it's coming from a wrestling fan, but this is politics. This is real world stuff. You know,
Yeah.
we're talking about our president here, and with policies that are going to impact the entire world. And the Joe Rogan thing was a trip, man.
That's how I know we're living in bizarro world, where you look at Joe Rogan maybe 10 years ago, hell, maybe even 8 years ago, and I don't see that podcast going the same way that I think it went, because I've had a few friends listen to it. I've read some of the articles about like top 7 takeaways from it, and it sounds like the two of them were just very, very gushing over each other and really enjoying each other's company.
Well, it was a lot of gush.
I don't want to misspeak because I have not listened to it yet.
There was a lot of gush, but it was the biggest this, the biggest. It's a lot of that type of conversation. And
Like
Joe did kind of, I want to say this in quotes, like push back on him, but he never followed through with it, where Trump would just start talking and going off, and it was just like, what are you actually saying here? It's just a sentence that strings to another, and the topic changed 5 times in it, and it just gets
podcasting
so
with me.
Well,
bizarre.
he calls it the swerve, doesn't he?
That's his hair.
No, not the bit I'm talking about, at least. But then
No, but like Trump calls that the. He has
Someone
he has
saying
a term-
weaving.
The weave.
The
He
weave.
calls it the
Oh,
weave.
yeah,
Whenever
yeah.
he's interviewed about this stuff, he goes, "Well, I call it the weave," and
Oh,
it throws people
yes,
off.
so right, yes. He actually does end this
He just
bit bringing
takes
up
the
the weave thing. And Joe was like, hey, what are you saying? And he's like, oh, sorry, I weaved too far or whatever. And then Joe kind of calls him out a little bit, but then doesn't actually then get the answer. It doesn't actually at all push back on it. And it creates this like thing of like, oh man, there was a moment that this could have been something, but you just kind of called out that it's weird that Trump's doing this, but you didn't do anything with it. So then that was hour 1 of a 4-hour podcast, and it just kept happening, and it was deeply upsetting to hear this.
And that's the weirdest thing to me is if you were like in a different world, in a different universe, right? If Donald Trump was like a Democratic candidate, right? Or he went on Rogan of 8 years ago, and Rogan was like, I'm going to act, because Rogan used to legitimately take people to task. It's one of the reasons why I started listening to him to begin with, because he was like, no, the whole power of this medium, this is why he got popular to begin with, was that we can sit here for 3 hours or 6 hours or 20 hours until we get to the bottom of whatever people are saying. And he used to have really interesting discussions. They would argue with me. He would argue with comics who would go like, I can't remember the name of the comic, but there was one comic that went like super alt-right. And he was like, what are you doing, man? Like, he literally was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you making these choices? Why are you saying these things that I don't think you believe in? And so I would hope that he would do that for Trump as well, but I just don't
That guy's
think
gone. that Rogan died.
Yeah,
a
but I
long
just
time
and that
ago,
and
man.
that yeah, he's just unfortunately gone, and it's really sad because I want to live in a universe where the presidential candidate goes on the most popular podcast in the world and gets taken to task. And if he's worth his salt, he won't worry about that. He'll just go and say, I can defend myself, but he's not going to do
Well,
that,
one
right?
of the most bizarre parts of it is like the intro to the whole thing that like to this moment, I don't actually know what was real and why this was said. But Joe essentially introduces Trump as like, oh, like when you were on Oprah, they loved you. And like the women were like cheering for you and whatever. I don't know what happened like with some turns. And Trump goes off in this whole bit, and he was like, "Oh yeah, like the last week I was on Thursday or Friday, like something like that."
You mean The View?
And no, they said Oprah, and so that's where this gets really. It was like, what are they talking about? And Trump said last week, and he kind of stumbled through it. He was like, last week, Thursday, Friday, yeah, and like open arms and all this stuff. And then people are be like, "Yo, Oprah's been off the air since 2011. Like, what are we talking about here?" And then people are like, "No, he was saying he was on Oprah's last week, not the last week." You get what I'm saying?
Oh,
Like,
he was one of the
not
last
week
episodes
from
of
now,
Oprah.
but on Oprah's last week, he was a
that
guest.
makes sense.
But like the way that they frame it and phrase it, whether this was intentional or not, was implying that this happened last week. But even then, what was Joe bringing up? Because like what Joe was saying, oh, they loved you, and it was like he wasn't talking about 2011. So it just kind of started off on this place of like, I'm confused about what's
I will
happening.
say, having listened to a lot of hours of the Joe Rogan podcast, it is still legitimately him and Jamie, and I think that they are very. Sometimes that shit can happen. You know, we do podcasts here as well. I'm not
Trump. Like this is
but it's also. I mean, yeah, you got Trump. He's confusing to begin with. You got one producer on this. I'm sure they just got fucked.
There
up.
were a couple of moments.
I'm sure they're
it's irrelevant.
I'm sure they're just dumb. and
There
made a
were
mistake.
a couple of moments in some clips that I saw where it did feel like the way that we just kind of entertain the old person who's talking and just go that's fine. And like there's a moment where Trump says, "I lost. Well, I won. I didn't lose. Like he says, because he says, I lost by this much. I didn't lose."
Yeah.
And
Joe
Rogan
laughs at
kind of
him.
laughs at him as like okay, like all right,
Yeah.
man. And there were a couple of different moments where Joe was like asking him about a policy in specific, and was kind of like, well, what was that thing though? And he's like, well, you know, you could, and he was essentially doing, if anybody's fans of Dan Le Batard's show out there, doing the Stu Gaza, look it up, you know, like, but that's funny because he's not running for president.
Yeah.
And
Comedy's
there were a
sports
couple of moments where there was a little bit of way more pushback than I expected, which is like not much at all. Granted, in the grand scheme of things, there was not really. This wasn't like a couple of other interviews we've seen with Trump, and the reason why he didn't want to go back on 60 Minutes because he was receiving some sort of pushback.
Well, that was the whole thing with the debate, right?
Just
Was
being
they-
asked to
they
answer
just kept
questions.
fact checking him and kept interrupting
He's
him.
being asked to answer questions.
No, but
Crazy.
it wasn't that. It was the fact that for the first time, really, in a debate, he had been like, they muted his mic and were like, no, this isn't true. This is, you know, you're just making things up or that's a lie. And he just did not like that. He will not put himself in a situation like that again.
And with all of this, it, you know, obviously the four of us might be aligned in some ways, might differ in others, and like we don't have one singular voice here at Kind of Funny. I want that to be clear. I feel like we do take stances on things and are willing to do that. I think it's very important to. But so I don't want to speak for anyone else in saying this, but personally, I think it's very important to, if you do believe in your candidate, to stand by that candidate and to push that candidate and to be. I've seen a lot of people like, oh, you can't tell people what to vote for. I very much think you should tell people if we're in a situation like this. So I personally feel comfortable saying you should vote for Kamala in this. And even if you're living in California, like I am, I voted for Kamala because we need these numbers to be as big as possible so that any of the games we need to play, any of the stats, I won but I didn't win. I won what I didn't. We need any victory we can get to be able to strengthen that argument for whatever the next couple of months might look like. We don't know. We don't know what is going to come into play. So it's like the more that it can be definitive that Kamala won, the better. And like going into this, a week out of it, it's like when we were, it was Biden and Trump and the assassination attempt, and we had that.
What a crazy statement!
I know. And we did the podcast. Like I was saying, at that moment in time, it's like I was still leaning that I think Trump is going to win, and like that's very scary. But it's just that's the way that it felt. And with where we're at now, I I am less confident in anything. Like I feel like I don't feel like the polls mean jack shit at this point,
Yeah,
because
100%.
what do they even represent? And with the game being played, I don't think that they represent anything of any type of substance. But I do think that Kamala definitely has a chance to win this. And I think that is important to focus on. Of what do I think is going to happen, whatever, I don't know. But I truly believe that there is a chance that we can legitimately get this done, but then also get it done in ways that what about this can be countered, dispelled, just like,
Yeah, if
let's
you
keep
can
this
run
as
the
clean as
number up,
possible.
right, and get them beyond the margins of error, right, and do all that stuff and make it pretty fucking blatantly obvious. And to your point, like, yeah, nobody's speaking on behalf of everybody here, but like, you've had people tell you, don't tell me how to vote or whatever, and I've seen those comments obviously as well or whatever. I think the biggest thing, especially for this podcast and the conversation we're trying to have here, that I'm trying to lead here, I should say, more than we're trying to have, is that I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm asking you to vote for Kamala Harris. Like, you can do whatever you want. And again, if you feel like you need to sit this out and that you don't want to be a part of this and you can't vote because of a single issue, I'm not going to tell you to vote for it. I'm going to ask you to vote for her and get over that, because I think this race is too important, that there is too much on the line. And over in the live chat right now, which you could be part of on Patreon or YouTube, Beast says, sorry guys, tuning out of this topic. The cast just is not saying anything substantial on why you should vote for Harris other than because she is not Trump. Well, Beast, funny thing about the first 30 minutes of the podcast, that's not the entire podcast. So we're going to run an ad from our sponsors, and then we're going to come back and go issue by issue to see how these candidates stack up and why you should be excited to vote for Kamala Harris, not just because she isn't let me check my notes here, 34 felony convictions and liable for sexual assault. So right now, here's a word from our sponsors.
Here we are, the spookiest week of the year, and our friends at NVIDIA GeForce are making big moves with some of the season's biggest PC releases. Promise, all treats here, no tricks. Dragon Age the Veilguard is on just about everyone's shortlist. When you run this on a GeForce RTX 40 series, you get high-end ray-traced graphics in-game and accelerated performance with DLSS 3. Make sure you're good to go the instant you are playing on October 31st. John Marston looks great in the new PC release of Red Dead Redemption. Available now. There's day one support in-game for NVIDIA DLSS 3 with frame generation and super resolution to boost frame rate. NVIDIA Reflex's latency-reducing tech will make you the fastest gunslinger in the West. Immerse yourself in the eerie expansion to Alan Wake 2. The Lake House. This is one of the best looking PC games you can play today. Enjoy full path tracing, DLSS 3.5, and NVIDIA Reflex throughout the game. You can check out Greg and Andy showing it all off in last week's Alan Wake stream over on our YouTube channel now. This episode's brought to you by Phasmophobia. The genre-defining horror game is finally out now on consoles. Yes, that's right. The phenomenon that is Phasmophobia has finally entered console early access on PS5, PSVR 2, and Xbox Series X and S, with full cross-play support across all platforms from day one. Join the already almost 20 million players on Steam, including our very own Snowbike Mike, and get ready for some spine-chilling ghost hunting with up to 3 friends. Experience the horror as you investigate immersive haunted locations and gather evidence to help you succeed. With several different ghost types and unique traits, no ghost hunt is ever the same. Making sure you work as a team and utilize your equipment is the key to making it out alive. It's time, Ghost Hunters. Phasmophobia is out now on PS5, PSVR 2, and Xbox Series X and S. Gather your friends and prepare for the terrifying ghost hunts that await. This episode is brought to you by New World Eternum. New World Eternum is a thrilling action RPG experience for console and PC players with a vibrant world, vast and beautiful setting, dynamic real-time action combat, and the freedom for players to choose how to forge their destiny. Combat is skill-based and dynamic, incorporating swords, guns, and sorcery so that you can build one character to rule them all as you explore Eternum and unravel the mysteries of the supernatural island that you can't leave. You love playing RPGs alone? You can in New World Eternum, or play cooperatively with your friends as you complete quests, get better gear, and level up. Greg played this at Summer Game Fest on PlayStation 5 and was caught off guard by how much he enjoyed it and how many hours he said he could see himself sinking into the final product. There's boss fights, cool enemies, crossplay, resource gathering, and crafting. So yeah, this sounds like a Greg game. New World Eternum is available now on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC.
Greg, you ever think there'd be like a cool, what I would love to do, I wish we just did it like ESPN does it, where they always try to catch you by surprise of like, here are these two quarterbacks and how they did in the first 6 years of their career. And it's always like, one of them is a big name, and one of them maybe not. And they're trying to make a point of like, hey, that guy actually was a lot better than you thought it was, but they blank out their name so you don't know, and they just show you the stats. And that's what I would love
You
for
want to do it like that?
Zero felony convictions.
Yeah, exactly.
Candidate we're
Exactly.
talking
Yeah,
about?
like this can't like which one would you
Call
Abortion
America
rights?
a trash can.
this candidate of 11 accusations of sexual assault. This can and just kind of like
This
see
candidate
what
doesn't
we would
hate Puerto Ricans. This one does hate Puerto Ricans.
Yeah, I
Like,
just
what
would
are we
love to
talking
see like who would pick what. But yeah, I to go back to just real quick what we think about
Please.
and how I sort of what I think Trump has done to a lot of these people's brains, because I think something that kind of really woke me up was that HBO
He admits that he's
He
woke.
admits
He
it.
admits he's woke.
No, look.
Oh, do it again.
Cue
Something
it.
that really woke me up.
No.
The Alarmo. You know what I mean?
QAnon has really woke me up. No, okay.
I got the red pill.
Going back to that HBO doc, I think was really alarming, alarmo in a big way, because
You man.
seeing that family
I'm on board, man. Get me one of
discover how like tricked they were.
Yeah.
By and they thought they were just fighting for this big cause, and then they went to the Capitol, and then
Yeah.
Trump said no, and then they were like, shit, we were kind of abandoned. Like, what
Turns
the
out we're
fuck?
idiots.
And like some people have understood that. So like for me, when we do how the fuck can anybody vote for this guy? For me, I think there's two types of people on the Republic, or let's go three types of people. One type of people that say, I vote red no matter what, right? I got to stick to my guns. I've always been a lifelong Republican. And then there are people that say, that have just been totally tricked, that fully believe and have bought into this idea that, immigrants are going to come murder you, and that they are performing surgeries on 5-year-olds in elementary school to switch their genders.
The pets in Springfield.
You've seen so many fucking school nurses be like, I
poor
can't even
cats
give
and
a kid
dogs.
aspirin. What the fuck are y'all talking about? And then there are people that are just like, I want the other side to lose because I think they're a bunch of liberal babies. Cry harder, cope, whatever the fuck. Like, those are the sort of how I combine them. And it's like, whichever pool you fall into, I might feel more sympathy for, or I might try to be like, just listen for a little bit, please. Try to let some of this information soak in there. Not everything. People aren't just lying to you out there. They're not eating your pets. They're not. You keep on being worried about a trans woman that's going to sexually assault your child, and it's like, dog, the call's coming from inside the house. Like, look, whenever there's an arrest being made about some sexual assault, just look at who it is. Whenever there's a school shooting, look at who it is. Stop assuming that it's all on the other side.
This trans boogeyman, when it's like, how many priests have raped children? Can we start? So if you want to go that far with the trans stuff, great. Let's dial it back and let's start with abolishing the Catholic Church, because they're 14 million times worse than what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, how can you not understand this? How is that?
I think a lot of
disconnected
it is just like a way to sort of excuse what is unknown and what you fear, right?
Sure.
Like trans people are such an unknown to these people because they aren't allowed, or they aren't necessarily around them a whole lot. Although they probably are, they're just scared to come out. And that's another thing I always just laugh about whenever people say, when they make fun of San Francisco as being like super gay and all the trans people live there. It's like, it's kind of a self-own, because all that means is they feel more safe to come out here and live here.
Well, you're living in your coastal cities with your liberal bubbles
Yeah,
that are filled with diverse people.
yeah, I don't know.
Wait, so you're in the bubble then, aren't you? That
it's
we're
like, well-
surrounded by the people who are exactly like you?
it's like how it's just it's. Yeah, I can't imagine how it feels to be like, well, those people don't feel safe around me, so they don't want to come out here, right? This isn't an epidemic. This isn't a mental illness. It's just people wanting to feel safe and accepted, and that's all it is.
Yeah.
Quit reading more into it.
We'll go to the New York Times, an article they published over the weekend. That was updated on October 24th. Where Kamala Harris and Donald Trump stand on, and then it's an look at that. It's cool.
That's
It's
cool.
automated
I don't know,
headlines
I've ever seen
changing.
that. That's
Foreign
cool.
policy, healthcare. It's a great piece from the New York Times that
great.
lays it out in one paragraph for each. So we'll start with abortion.
Woke news.
Kamala Harris. Ms. Harris supports a federal right to abortion and wants to prevent states from banning the procedure before fetal viability. She has regularly spoken out in favor of abortion rights, including making the first official visit to an abortion clinic by a president or vice president. Donald Trump. Mr. Trump's Supreme Court appointees enabled the overturning of Roe v. Wade, ending federal protections for abortion. He has said that he would not sign a federal abortion ban, but that states should be allowed to enact any restrictions they choose. So, I am very much pro-choice. I am very much pro-abortion. Abortion is healthcare. I also don't fucking trust Donald Trump as far as I can throw him. I do not for a second believe he would not sign into a federal ban the second he got the chance to, nor do I not believe that the Supreme Court won't continue to fudge everything up and fuck this up. Who, of course, as I've said before, we should expand the Supreme Court. I haven't said it before on this podcast right now. We should install term limits. And more importantly, we should go after these fuckers that lied when they were in their confirmation hearings and they kept saying, oh, well, Roe v. Wade's the law of the land.
Mm-hmm.
And when they were asked specifically about this and they lied under fucking oath saying they wouldn't get involved with it, and then they immediately did and overturned this shit. Like, it infuriates me. And again, this is back to me wanting I would say I want somebody with the conviction passions of Bernie Sanders, but like 20 years younger, 30 years younger, just get in there and fucking go like, we're going hard the other way, and we're gonna get fucking crazy. We'll give you something to be afraid of, radical right. We'll give you a fucking
get nuts.
liberal party you need to be fucking looking out for, right? But I digress.
Instead, we're just trying to get, free healthcare.
Yeah, I know,
that's
right?
Too radical.
And
for you
dude,
all,
don't even get me started. You nail it, Andy, of course. And remember, everybody, my name's Greg. I'm an idiot. Like, I am not at all a political science expert. I am not a fucking world politics expert. We're going to make plenty of mistakes in here and do all sorts of stuff. What drives me crazy about the concern for free healthcare is this belief that it would fundamentally rock and change all this shit when it would just make it better for, first off, the people who have no healthcare, and then probably the people who still want to pay for healthcare. In Canada, they have free healthcare. You're all aware of this. Yeah. They still have private insurance. You can still get private insurance in Canada so that you could go to different places, other eyes, so you don't have to wait in the emergency room that is filled with people who one of them has a hangnail, one of them has a nail hanging from their head. Like, there's like ways around. Like, I'm being very broad and very general here, but it's like this is the problem with so much of the right, is that they're scared of boogeymen that they don't understand what they're fucking talking about. Yeah. Like, there's ways to do this and do it. And again, Trump was fucking president for 4 years. We'll get to healthcare in a second. He tried to dismantle Obamacare and he couldn't fucking do it. He has concepts of a plan for his own thing. Like, what are we fucking talking about? Why do you care? Vote for Kamala Harris. Abortion is healthcare. It doesn't affect you. People traveling across state lines, they get an abortion?
No, it's horrible. Yeah, I'm firmly on that side.
Now they're trying to limit being able to like do anything through mail as well.
Yeah. They just want to control people. They just want to control people. Yeah. Especially women.
Which, yeah, I know. It's really sad.
And some of it, like, again, I think even on that mini podcasting that we did with Joe, not Biden, Joey Noel.
Damn.
I was like, did I miss a day?
Or it's like, I just always...
You do a Biden impression yet? You missed it.
I can do an impression of Chris Cody, who's on the Lebtar show, who does an impression of Biden.
Okay, hit me with it.
Which is just, yeah, man, down Scranton.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's real bad. It's hilarious. Lebtar would be like, nobody can do a Trump or a Biden.
Before he even got there, Jenny said, Nuggy says, his Biden is not good.
What do you mean? I got a good impression.
Wow.
They're like, no, it's awful. It's so bad. But going back to that little mini podcast we did, what I always just go back to the George Carlin thing. They are pro-life until you are out of the womb, and then they don't give a shit about you. Like, their money... They act so dumbfounded about where this money would go for. Our debt ceiling keeps climbing. Our debt, like, who gives a shit? Like, those numbers don't mean anything to me anymore. I don't care about what our debt is. I don't think anybody gives a shit. It's just something to point out and be like, well, we can't give you healthcare because look at this number keeps going up. We are consistently spending, we're seeing cities get cyber trucks for their police department. And so many police departments are the most overfunded things in the planet. We are not asked. I don't want to abolish police departments. Why the fuck are teachers having to buy goddamn spiral notebooks and stuff? Why are people suffering and going into extreme debt because they have a disease that they didn't plan for? It just, things happen like that. It's like they will come up with any excuse to say we can't give you that because look at that number, it keeps climbing up. It's like, dog, like people are dying out here, man.
It's 13 years of Catholic school, right, on my side, and then it's them sitting there and being like, well, these are Christian values, when like you're ignoring the actual teachings of Christ. Christ would tell you to take care of all these people. He would tell you to open your arms to the migrants. He would tell you, you know what I mean? Like, what the fuck are we talking
DEI. About?
Yeah, dude, Jesus would not be. He would not be looked kindly upon by the Republican Party of 2024. Let's move on to climate. This is again the New York Times. Ms. Harris supports the Biden administration's general approach to climate policies, including subsidies for renewable energy. She has promoted environmental justice programs which focus on the impact of climate change on marginalized communities. Mr. Trump denies established climate science, disparages renewable energy, and champions unlimited production of fossil fuels. His administration rolled back more than 100 environmental protection regulations, and he plans a similar agenda if elected again. Please vote for Kamala Harris.
I mean, it feels parody. Mr. Trump denies established climate science. It is
science, everybody. It is fucking science. Are we really sitting here watching the weather we have had? I would say, just say this year. I don't even have to go beyond it, but just this year, we're going to act like we didn't have anything to do with this, that this doesn't have anything to do with this.
Every year we get the hottest year in recorded history.
Right? I saw some fucking outrageous thing about Arizona or Phoenix. Well, Phoenix is in Arizona, but you know what I mean? An Arizona city where it was like the graph and it was just like outrageous.
Oh, there's parts of Arizona that are just like during certain days uninhabitable. They're like, you have to stay inside because it's too hot. And if your air conditioning breaks, you're going to die.
The randomly spawning hurricanes. And suddenly
there's city they're mashing the disaster.
And suddenly there's 12 tornadoes. And it's like, unpredictable things can happen. The thing about Hurricane Watch is that people can prep and evacuate and live. But like when it happens that quickly, it's scientists are dumbfounded by how quickly this stuff is generating and how violent things are generating. And it's going to keep getting worse. I call him Jealous Jesus. I had to look up adjectives with the letter J,
That was good though. You got it. Yeah, you know that.
What does he call? Didn't he call Kamala like Laughing Kamala or something? Like,
you can work on that.
The memes of like comparing Trump to the Boston Celtics era Shaq. It's like he's so washed, bro. Like you can't Laughing Kamala. It's like he has nothing anymore. He's so washed.
Crime. Ms. Harris supports more funding for the police, a change from her first presidential campaign, during which she said adding officers wouldn't make communities safer. She supported significant criminal justice reforms in 2019, but has not confirmed whether she still does. Restrictions on guns are a major component of her proposals for reducing crime. Mr. Trump wants to deploy the military to Democratic-run cities, potentially by invoking the Insurrection Act, to combat what he describes as rampant crime, though FBI statistics show that crime rates have dropped. He signaled a criminal justice reform bill as president, but since has called for harsher criminal penalties and less due process. He opposes gun restrictions.
Don't forget he also wants to put people who are like
the enemy within.
Yeah, the people who are in charge of his trials, he wants to put them all in jail as well.
Yeah.
Fire them, excuse me, not put them in
thankfully, because of the Supreme Court he installed, presidential immunity is going to be a big part of it.
That's pretty huge for him.
This is the first set of these paragraphs that I look at it, and I'm like, well, I don't agree with hers.
Yeah, 100%.
Then you read his, and you're like, well, I agree with that less. And that's, I think, a fair place to be.
And to pull over to the side again, this is something that I feel like I'm old, obviously, and don't get me wrong, we've all been forced to grow up a lot in the last few elections of what America really is and what we're really doing. Specifically checks and balances, which were fucking bullshit, it turns out, and never did it, right? But I remember growing up and learning about politics and presidential races, or even your local things, which of course vote local too. That's a big part of all this. Ugh. But it being this idea that like there's not going to be a silver bullet magic candidate often, if ever, that you agree with everything on, right? This is about, we can keep boiling it down to lesser of two evils, but it is about picking somebody who you think has the better chance of running the country, the school board, whatever it's going to be. And so, yeah, I'm here as well, where it's like, we are giving police the money and equipment to go out and fucking fight wars, which is crazy, right? And I'm not the one of abolish the police. I think there's a healthy middle ground there, right? Especially living in San Francisco and seeing what we see here all the time. Where it really is that we need more mental health facilities. We need more, not even volunteers.
That goes back to the free healthcare.
Right. Well, go back to Reagan, but let's not get started on that now.
You start dialing these back, and you start thinking that everything like that has these big ramifications. And yeah, like more police is not gonna solve that problem.
And it's that thing of, I forget now, and obviously there's a lot going on in this podcast, so I appreciate you all hanging in there with us. There's an actual term for it, but the idea of not police officers, but people who are working with the mental health.
Like nonviolent responders, I think.
Yes,
or something like
right.
that.
Who come in and it is hey, what's going on? You need this kind of service and this kind of help and this kind of counseling, and I'm helping you with that, rather than what I've seen so many times in San Francisco.
But how will we pay for it?
Which are two police who are trying their best, who are talking to a homeless person who's having a freak out on the corner. I'll never get this back in the Sunset. Walking to the corner store or the grocery store and passing two officers talking to one of the homeless people who is in the Sunset all the time, who clearly had the cops calling them for doing whatever they were doing. The cops are talking. The guy is freaking out. Went to the store. I came back. That person is still just there in the doorway. Because what are the cops going to do? Like what law?
To be fair, I've seen the opposite as well. I don't want to paint the opposite picture, but I have seen a lot of those because when they instituted that, when they dialed back. I don't actually think Breed ever really dialed back like defunding police. I think people like to say that about San Francisco, but I don't think she ever actually did that. I think actually it's the opposite, where there was for a couple of years she was like, we need more cops because we actually haven't hit the legal requirement for a city our size to have a police force. So that's why a lot of people are like, hey, maybe we should at least have that. Like that's the bare minimum that a city should have. That having said, I've seen multiple times where those crews are, because there's always a cop there. A cop has to come, but then there's the non-armed responders.
Oh, but what I'm saying is I didn't have a non-armed responder. It was two police officers there being like, I don't know.
But I'm saying both of them have the same outcome every single time.
Gotcha,
I've seen it's all anecdotal, by the way. I'm sure there's multiple times where people have been helped and potentially been put in places where they can get help. But I think for the most part, that's the bigger problem in San Francisco. It's not that we have too few police or too little police. It's what happens when the guy says, okay, I'd like to get help. Then what do you, like, where do we go? And like, we don't even have enough shelter space for most of the homeless community, homeless population. It sucks. And that has less to do with should we have more cops and less cops. And it has more to do with, hey, how do we just like maybe address that, like the homeless situation from a root level? How do we solve that first?
Yeah.
So we don't need more police.
Yeah.
That's what we really should be talking about.
100%. And then, to turn it to Trump here, right? And like everything we've seen on this campaign trail, right? Of them eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets in Springfield, to just turning it on like, oh, it's lawless in the city and there's gang warfare here. And it's like the mayors are out there like, we are not. Don't say this.
Let me be clear. I live in the fucking heart of San Francisco. We do not need any more military presence. We do not need more police presence. We need policies that work for mental health is what I see most of the time. And I don't know why our local government can't get that together. I actually don't know why our state government can't get that together, because we have one of the fucking most incredibly rich economies in the world.
Yeah.
California, I think, is like I want to say top 10 biggest economies in the world. I mean, you can check that. It's wild to me that we can't give people the services that they need. And it's wild to me that we don't have a solid fucking plan to curb homelessness for the next fifth largest. We don't seem to have a solid plan to end homelessness, which is wild to me. It's crazy. It's just getting worse. Why?
But
Elon
Musk,
how you looked at Tim like Tim was going to tell you.
But Elon Musk is going to give $1 million away to anybody who
already voted.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, just the thing with the police side of stuff, and I feel like we can move on to focus more on the actual big scale things like the police, and I'm even talking specifically about the San Francisco police. It's like they need to be taught not only not to be bullies, but not to be bullies. And I think that's really what it comes down to is like, what?
Oh, no. I agree. I was just going to say I have an interesting interaction I saw the other day, which hopefully is a sign of something different. But I'm sure, again, a lot of everything I see walking on the streets of San Francisco is totally anecdotal, right? I'm
of course,
boots on the ground. Like I see a cop here, I see something there, so take everything I'm saying view everything I'm saying through that lens. Sorry, continue, Tim.
No, let's keep going on.
The next section here is democracy. Ms. Harris's campaign has framed the election in part as a fight to preserve American democracy. She has condemned Mr. Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election, and she supports legislation to expand voting access and counter restrictions in Republican-led states. Mr. Trump is the only U.S. president who has refused to accept his loss. He tried to overturn the 2020 election and has sought to delegitimize the electoral system. He has used dehumanizing terms like vermin to describe his political opponents. And as we've heard, I think since it's published, he's talked about going after his political rivals afterwards if he was president.
You know,
of course, you can hide behind it's a joke no matter what the comment is. But
I think the most important thing I worry about is what he said during the rally, which was, quote, I think with our little secret, we're going to do really well with the House. Our little secret is having a big impact. He and I have a little secret. We'll tell you what it is when the race is over. And that's he's talking about Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House. And people are now wondering, like, what are you hinting about?
Yeah.
Like, and some people are wondering, is he just going to not accept losing, or like what is his plan now?
Well, I think
is there or is this just crazy ramblings that we've heard from him before? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big fear, and I don't know that it's 100% founded, but the big fear is that once he gets in office again, he won't leave. And and obviously we have a lot of things set up so that can't happen, but still,
do we though? Checks and balances.
That's the problem, right? I mean, you have the Supreme Court, you've got the Senate, you've got a lot of different things on your side. So I don't purport to know all the steps that he would need to take to do that. But when you say things like we are at a Christian rally and you say, I want my good Christian voters to go out and vote and you'll never have to vote again, you know, and obviously like you could back that up with saying, oh, I just meant like a lot of these people don't want to leave their house, but I just need you to vote this one time and then you don't have to worry about it again, I think was the spirit of what Trump said. But when you phrase it the way he said it, you start thinking to yourself, like, you got to just, you know what I mean? Like, that's terrible. That can be very scary for people when you're not afraid of the fascist label.
That was the whole thing today on, NPR and all the fallout or the reactions to this Madison Square Garden thing, right? Of the political reporters talking about it and being shocked that this wasn't let's get the voters who are on the fence. This was, let's rile our audience up. Let's remind them how inhuman our opponents are. Let's insult. I mean, the fact that Republican people, like senators and stuff, were coming out today and be like, yo, that's fucked up and that was a racist thing to say. And like,
everybody in Florida freaking out, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, when, fucking
Rick Scott and everybody.
We needed the goddamn Thanos Avengers thing, right? Of like, well, that's not, they're the bad guys. I guess it was the Avengers, just the Avengers of like J-Lo and Bad Bunny be like, oh, you're coming after Puerto Rico? We'll come out and fucking support Kamala. Let's put it all up there. Let's do that. God bless them.
This is another one looking at these two together where it's like I similar like kind of what Greg was saying earlier about, for many years in our lives, we didn't need to worry about the stuff that comes from a very privileged position.
Very privileged.
And also just age comes with that as well, given the ages that I was specifically during some of these elections. But like looking at this, it's like, I don't have any faith in the democratic system. And why would I, given how things went even in the last 8 years, when I have been more tuned into all of this and being forced to pay attention to everything that's going on. I don't believe it. I don't believe that they're going to do things the right way and that it's going to be on the up and up. I actually feel the opposite of that. But then you look at Trump's and you're like, well, based on what we've seen him do and based on how he talks about stuff, that's clearly worse. I hate that we're in a position that I need to look at it and be like, well, lesser two evils for something like democracy. But then I've always looked at it and like, I know that we've all went to school.
What's throwing you off about Kamala Harris being bad?
Just like the supporting needing the American democracy to keep functioning the way that it is. I don't believe in the way that it functions. I think it's.
I see what you're saying.
I think it's.
The status quo.
It's ridiculous that the electoral college and all this stuff, and people have explained it to me, and I totally get it. I understand the why, and I understand the when of how important it was then. But then you look at it now, and anytime I see the map of like how many votes go to each state and how many people are in that state, it's like this is off. This is not representative. The reasoning behind the Electoral College is not being represented by how it's broken down here. So to me, that's a broken system, but it's not as broken as somebody. Yeah, and thank you for asking me to. But it's just like I can't personally look at that and be like, yeah, I think that this is right or fair. And I'm not saying that as then our team would clearly fucking win, because A, I'm not looking at it as teams, and B, I am just looking at it as I understand that people in Ohio have many different needs than we do in California.
Yeah.
But when you start looking at where all the people are and how those votes are working and how the people representing us work, like these systems don't work. But what doesn't work even more is Trump just coming in and deciding whatever he wants to that'll make him the most money is going to be able to be like, oh yeah, I'm staying here forever. And fuck these people, and y'all are with me. Elon's my right-hand guy. Like, what's to say he's not going to do all that?
Yeah, 100%. And that's, again, like, the way he acts, the way he talks, the way he walks. No, it's, it's this idea of, like, there's part of me all the time that's like, oh, man, not all the time. When you get into these dark places and you think about where we're at right now with American democracy, right? There's that idea of like, man, what if we seceded from the what if, and not like really, but like, what if it was more like Europe where there's all these different countries, right? And then it's like, well, the way this was all started was the idea that every state was doing its own thing, but we came together for this giant thing, a republic, right? But then it's this concern now of like, fine, whatever, we lost this, and was it fair or not in terms of how the fucking deck got loaded to get rid of Roe v. Wade, right? But it's like, now I don't believe you, Donald Trump, man who lies every time you open your mouth and says, back to the Joe Rogan thing, right? Says so many lies anytime he talks that he's just desensitized the world to it. So you assume everyone understands he's saying bullshit, but clearly there's millions of Americans who don't. They think this is actually the word. Like, again, and I hate to keep falling back on this, but being raised Catholic, right? Learning about Jesus and all this stuff, to sit here and see the people putting their hands over Donald Trump, to see, like, I was down in Union Square a couple weeks ago after dinner with you, and there was a Trump tent out there selling merch, and one of them was him surrounded by angels. I'm like, we know this man paid an adult film star off. Like, what are you talking about? And I'm not saying you can't be forgiven. I'm not saying that's even, like, don't get me wrong, having sex with an adult film star is bad, but I'm like, you, the most devout, acting holier than thou people, don't see this as a violation of your very being? You know, remember when they all wanted to throw Obama out of office because he wore a tan suit? Like, how have we gotten so far into this? I digress.
I'm gonna say that we got to do the quarterback comparison. We got to do the stat comparison.
Well, no, what's scary, and I don't want to go too deep into this, but Greg, you talking about the lies and all of that. Like, something that's been incredibly disturbing to me in recent times has been the Elon Musk and Twitter of it all, of seeing the way that Elon has talked about Trump and has skyrocketed in how much and the way he does, and the money that Andy's talking about and all of that. But the things he retweets, the things that he quote tweets, the things that he adds as context to the things that he's retweeting. It's so scary with the clearly personal agenda that he has, and everyone has an agenda, everyone has a business. Like, I get so many factors to this, but his whole push against legacy media and his whole push towards, I forget the term that he's using now, but like the people are journalists, like the citizen journalism. And it really is scary as hell that journalism, which there are ethics, Greg went to journalism school, and the amount of times you talk about that, not just saying that you did it, the lessons that you learned and the way that you think about an issue that we're talking about, I'm like, oh my God, there's a right way to do this. And there's many wrong ways to do this. And it feels like there's an actual, it's not just like, oh, I'm smarter than you. It's that, no, there's ways you need to think about this ethically in order for it to count as news or to count as fact or to count as any of these things. That has to be substantiated, right? Having Jason Schreier on a couple of weeks ago, just with him talking about why he would or wouldn't put out stories before his book. And I feel like he answered that incredibly well, because it is easy to look at and be like, well, you're saving the good stuff to make the money. And I'm sure there's levels to some extent, but the point is there's journalism to back up the decisions made of, well, I didn't have two people say it, so I didn't, or whatever it was.
I couldn't get independent confirmation.
And sorry, I'm rambling a bit here, but the point I'm making
we've been really dialed in on this podcast.
It's scary that Elon talking about this like citizen journalism thing. It's like, oh, everybody is equal, and what anyone says should count equally, and that means that everything is a fact as long as you can say it and make more people believe you. Like, that's what it comes down to, of like him talking about Twitter or X being the home of real journalism. It's who can speak, I don't want to say the loudest, but who can sway the most. Like, that is what creates facts, and that is the way that they are creating facts. And I'm using facts here as new facts.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
Yeah.
That's so scary that it's like, it's Donald Trump's not lying if he convinces everybody that he's telling the truth. Then it's the truth based in the world that we're building here. And like, the two of those powers combined is so fucking scary, and it's happening. It's like not like, oh, it might happen. It's like we're there.
living it. Yeah.
And again, that's why the Rogan podcast, like, really, it was a combination of me seeing some of the Elon tweets over the weekend and listening to that podcast, that I was like, even when you lose, you don't, because you've convinced people that you won. It's like, well, you clearly see you didn't. I won.
Yeah, this was a big, the Rogan fallout, right? Or just reaction, I guess, not fallout. There were Kamala Harris campaign was running ads based on that. Were just clips of, him getting laughed at when he did this, him saying this or whatever. But there was a Politico piece that I thought was really insightful that was like, the winner of the day is Trump. Like, it doesn't matter that he looked dumb in these clips. It doesn't matter that he did this. He spoke to this audience. Joe Rogan's followers are hardcore and trust and believe in Joe Rogan. So if he's going to entertain him for this many hours and do this whole thing, like, granted, many of those people probably were already, listening, but it was also then the numbers of how many people listened to that versus how many people watched whatever rally Kamala did that day. And like, she's passed on the Joe Rogan opportunity because they couldn't line up schedules. And it's like, fuck, you know what I mean? Of like, all right, well, and like, is going on that the right way? And would it be this? And it doesn't matter. I listened to her on, I listened to Call Her Daddy, period. But she was on with Alex Cooper not too long ago. And that was a good conversation, but it was the same idea, right? Of like, you're speaking to a very specific audience by going on that. And Trump was speaking to a very specific audience by going on that.
And I've seen a lot of people call Kamala out on that for scheduling or not. Like, that's the type of thing you make work and they'll be like, oh, like, there's no way she could handle 3 hours of being real. Joe just keeps it real and stuff. And it's like, I find that, first off, wrong. Like, I don't believe that. I really think that she not only could hold her own with Rogan, but I also think that Rogan wouldn't destroy her in the way that people are implying that he would.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that he
doesn't really go after.
That's not. Yeah, that's just, I don't see that happening. So it just becomes this like reverse fear tactic thing.
And it's
like,
back to treating this as a traditional race. Donald Trump is not a traditional political opponent. And so for you to be like, hey, I'm going to like it. Yeah, you got to go off the playbook and do a 3-hour podcast where you're going to stutter and you're going to say, and you're going to, what I mean? That's what they don't want, I assume, her to do, because that's
going on Rogan.
Yeah. How they don't want her, or she doesn't want to present herself as that kind of person, that kind of candidate.
Yeah.
Right?
Because you got to play all those games.
Yep. Let's move on to the economy. Ms. Harris supports the Biden administration's spending on infrastructure and renewable energy. She wants to ban price gouging, create incentives to build housing, expand tax credits for middle and low-income households, and offset the costs by increasing taxes on corporations and wealthy Americans. Mr. Trump enacted a large package of tax cuts as president and pursued protectionist trade policies, including a trade war with China. He wants to cut taxes further and enact more sweeping tariffs. He says he would not cut Social Security or Medicare benefits, but has not provided a plan to keep the programs solvent. This is one that at least you're a little bit more like, okay, this doesn't sound as crazy as they go after each other, right?
Well, this seems just like Democrats versus Republicans, right? This is the traditional debate between which parties you support fiscally.
Right.
Right.
However, again, as I would ask you again, not tell you, but ask you to vote for Kamala Harris, especially if you're like, I'm going to sit this one out. I don't agree on one policy or two policies. That's how this presents. A different New York Times article I wanted to bring into the mix had 2 paragraphs I thought were impressive. Economists say that kind of broad-based tariff Mr. Trump is envisioning would significantly raise prices for U.S. manufacturers and businesses that must buy material and parts from abroad. Higher prices would be passed on to the U.S. consumers, with the burden falling particularly on poorer people. Mr. Trump's plan would also likely incite multiple trade wars as other countries retaliate with tariffs on American goods. Those trade spats would reduce U.S. exports, disrupt global supply chains, and shake the system of alliances that the United States has worked to construct since World War II.
Yeah, this was going viral a couple of weeks ago. Who knows how long it was ago?
Could have been yesterday.
Feels like we've lived 4 lifetimes.
But there's a liberal podcast host named David Pakman.
Pac-Man's got a podcast?
Yeah. And I don't listen to it. I haven't really like followed his stuff in many years, but a clip of his went viral where he was on somebody else's podcast. And look, like Greg said earlier, I'm an idiot. You ask me what a tariff is, I don't, fuck if I know. But I know now because of this podcast saying like, the thing that I don't believe Trump knows, I don't think Trump knows what a tariff is. And the way he describes what tariffs are is that we charge them more so we make more money, but it's the money is really coming from the people that are importing the goods. And the hosting the podcast is like, wait, but why is he saying that? And he's like, I don't know. You'll have to ask him, because he keeps on selling the American people these goods that hey, we're big on tariffs. We charge China a shitload for them.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna pay us a whole lot of money, and that's gonna bump up our economy. And that's the opposite of how tariffs work, is because tariffs, if you're buying steel or wood or wherever from overseas, you are paying more for that as a company. You're the one you're the one having to foot that bill. And the host is just very much like, well, why does he say that then? And he's like, I don't know, man. It's not how tariffs work. But in that clip, he's like, are you serious? You don't know how tariffs work? Okay, great. I want to explain this to you, because a lot of people do not understand, which I'm a dummy. I
don't know
haven't
how they work either.
Been in fucking, economics or history in ages, right? But it's something that I still don't know if he doesn't know how they work, or he does and he's just lying about it. We don't know
He's
that part
betting
of it
on
yet.
them. Again, to jump back to who we were probably pre-2016, right? And more even pre-2020. But I think for years we've been able to stick with me for this to walk, politicians at face value and be like, you're probably lying about this, that, and the other, but I'm sure it's not catastrophic, right? I think Trump just fucking lies and understands that 90% of people won't look into it. They won't fact check him. They won't look into whatever this is. And so he doesn't need to. I follow a bunch of different people. Aaron Rupert, right? Or Rupert, I forget. But he's a political guy on Twitter.
Him.
I follow him, and he updates all the time. And, he did a tweet. I'm going to get all this wrong. We'll say 3 months ago. Maybe it was more. Maybe it was less.
We don't know time
being
anymore.
like, hey, at this rate, Trump's going to tell you he's just going to get rid of income taxes. And then this past week, he's like, what if we got rid of income taxes and charge? And it's like, he's saying whatever he can say. It doesn't matter that the policy doesn't work. It's like when you're fucking running for 5th grade representative and you're just fucking saying shit you don't know if you can do with your 5th grade representative.
At recess every day.
Exactly.
Chocolate milk every day.
Yeah, NBC had one up here from
Pizza
October.
on Mondays and Fridays.
What tariffs do and why economists don't like them. Trump keeps expanding his tariff plans, but most trade analysts across the political spectrum warn they'd inflate consumer prices, right? So what tariffs do and who pays them, and this is a huge section, but the first paragraph goes, tariffs, also known as, I don't know, my voice cracked. Tariffs, also known as duties or levies, are deterrents. They penalize domestic firms that import foreign-made goods to encourage companies to source more of those items within the country. When a tariff is placed on a product, be it a watermelon, a washing machine, or a high-tech component, any U.S.-based company that imports it must pay a percentage of that item's price to the government, with federal officials setting the rate. So that's the idea of keeping more of this in America, right?
So
And
people
again, when he's talking,
think that we're charging China for it, but no, it's coming back. It's being passed to the consumer.
and so you're
rather,
strong-arming American corporations to use it, right? Which again, for when he's talking to Michigan, you think about losing all these car jobs, right? Pittsburgh and steel. This is the idea, keep jobs in the United States, make people buy American. And then he turns around and sells something from China, his fucking hat, and nobody calls him on it because there's a million things to call him on, and there's just too much. There's too many things.
I think it's really just identical to, we're gonna make Mexico pay for the wall. It's really just that. And then sort of, I'm just gonna tell you this, and you'll buy it, and that's it.
Yeah. Education. Ms. Harris wants to increase funding for public schools through measures including programs focused on low-income students. She supports the Biden administration's student loan forgiveness efforts and opposes laws that restrict what schools can teach about race, gender, and American history. Mr. Trump wants to abolish the Department of Education, give parents federal dollars to send their children to private schools or homeschool them, and restrict what schools can teach about race, gender, and American history. He opposes student debt forgiveness and affirmative action.
Holy shit!
And a lot of people, if anybody's made it this deep into the podcast and is a Trump supporter and is adamant in this, this is the kind of stuff I could see people throwing back at us in quotes, but more like the fake news, the journalists out to get him, yada, yada. Hats off to the New York Times in this article for calling it like it is. They're putting it in black and white. You've seen time and time again, I'm sure, on all your feeds, different publications bend over fucking backwards to make the insane goddamn things that come out of Donald Trump's mouth sound normal. Just sound like it isn't the most fucking... He wants to abolish the Department of Education, everybody.
Abolish the Department of Education.
He's threatened... There's an article in the Times this Sunday, and I'm sorry, Tim, you were actually making a point. I thought you were just...
No, it's, I mean, like, Roger, can you bring it up again? Like, the point that I'm making is just using his own words, but wants to abolish the Department of Education and wants to restrict what schools can teach about American history, right? Like, that's just, all of that is straight up evil villain bad guy stuff without any room for redeemability. Like, what are we talking about?
I just can't imagine how any parent in the right mind would be like, yeah, I definitely want to teach my own kid. Don't you want to send your kid off to school for a few hours and have some fucking time to yourself?
100%.
Come on,
you know
man.
I think about tossing him in boarding school all the time. Right?
Jeez,
but he's also, said in so many words, like withholding money from people who don't get on board with this. So if you weren't California, if you're California and you're like, no, we're going to fucking do this, you're not going to get federal money for it. Like,
and it's already not getting enough money. Like it's not working as well as it needs to because it's not getting properly funded. Let's refer back to one of the earlier ones we were talking about. It's just where this is at now. It's like we need to fix this, or else every generation's just going to get worse. It's the same thing about the Elon journalism thing, but now it just applies to everybody learning how to read. That's terrifying.
Hey, man, it all went downhill when they stopped teaching cursive.
This is pulling from the New York Times as well. He has vowed to withhold funding from schools that require vaccinations or that he deems to have promoted, quote, transgender ideology or critical race theory. And again, is it all bullshit to get him elected? I fucking highly doubt it. I think we've learned time and time again that's not what's going to happen, right? This is going to... I will tell you that this is a landmine around here, all right? But I'll say it and stick with me because I'm not criticizing Colin. But I remember on 2016, a very tense... Colin and Greg, it might have been the morning show at that point. I forget which it was. Probably still Colin and Greg Live. But it was in the studio above the comic shop. It was me and Colin on there. I think I was assembling Legos or whatever. And Colin and Kevin were getting into it. And I might be conflating a few different things. But I distinctly remember taking like a breath. And I wasn't even that worried about it. I was like, this sucks, but whatever. Maybe it won't be that bad. And I remember Colin saying, and this is not an attack on Colin, to be clear. Colin saying, listen, he got elected. The sun still rose this morning, and in like a few other bills. Roe v. Wade is still going to be the law of the land. It's not going to get overturned. And that's me using Colin as an example of somebody who was more dialed, and I don't know where he is now, but in 2016 was more dialed into politics than any other human being I knew. Yeah. Exactly, right? So, I mean, like the fact that he could believe that, and that was what it was to where we are now, right? I don't take it, you know what I mean? Trump can say this, and I can hope that it's just shit to get elected. I can hope that the checks and balances would stop him from doing this. I can't fucking risk that. I cannot risk that. Or the country cannot risk that. Well, you have to vote for Kamala Harris.
There are very few checks and balances left.
Right?
I mean, that's the problem is when you have the Supreme Court.
People getting all fucking sick off goddamn pork lunch meat. And then you got the article from when Trump was the president, and he's like, pork industry can watch itself now. We're taking away regulators. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
No regulations. He doesn't want any regulations. He doesn't want any of that stuff. It gets in the way of profits.
It's another clip here. He said he would create a credentialing body to certify teachers who embrace patriotic values and support our way of life.
Damn,
again, as a man who just gets asked, how are you doing? And then goes for 45 minutes on a fucking... Maybe this is all the, fucking Diary of a Madman that happens in his head.
Right, but you understand people, if you're watching this and you're like, these idiot liberals are just overreacting. You understand when you use language right like that, it's not that crazy to think that someone has fascist tendencies, right? If you compare that language with languages of historic fascists, like you see a lot of similarities of like totalitarianism, like... That in the manner of speaking of like being very black and white and saying you're either with us or you're going to be put into a place, someplace that's not going to be very, very good. This shit has happened in history. That's what
once or twice,
a few times.
To dial it back in, of course, ladies, gentlemen, and NBs, the 12 early warning signs of fascism. Yes, I read this in 2012. 2020. Number 1, powerful and continuing nationalism. Ding, ding, ding. Number 2, disdain for human rights. Oh, we'll get to those in a second for LGBTQ. Number 3, identification of enemies as a unifying cause. Hey, isn't he calling the Democrats the enemy within? Number 4, rampant sexism. Grab them by the pussy. When you're a celebrity, you can do whatever you want.
Man, I really thought it was over then.
Can you imagine what it would have been like to still exist in a normal fucking timeline?
Man, we thought it
Damn
was
you, Harambe.
over
You're
then.
done. Nope.
He had the debate after that statement went live or whatever. I was working for Rooster Teeth. I was at New York Comic Con, and I was like, "Whew, it's fucking over for this idiot." But people love that shit. It's
that cult of personality, man.
It's crazy.
Number
man.
5, controlled mass media. Number 6, obsession with national security.
So let's talk about controlled mass media. Who's
Sure.
his best friend?
Yeah, well, I mean, the citizen journalist now. It's fucking Bezos and the Washington Post. Come the fuck on.
Oh, what happened there?
Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, and they were going to endorse Kamala, and he's like, let's not endorse as a paper. Let's not endorse anybody. And of course, that gets out, and then that's great. And I think I forget if it's the EIC, but somebody from high up resigned over.
And there was like 60,000 people that
Canceled.
dropped their subscriptions.
Oh, good.
Good with
love
good for them.
I love the clips.
Actually, oh, that's right. I did see someone saying, "Hey, don't drop your subscription to the Washington Post. Drop it to Amazon Prime. Hit him where it actually hurts."
I love the clips of
It would
Trump.
really hurt him if you gave him your Twitch Prime.
Of Trump talking shit about Elon's electric cars. Like, do we like Elon? I don't like the electric cars, but it's just
It is weird to me. I guess I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but I don't understand Elon's game with Trump because it doesn't seem like, especially reading that one where it's like he's so pro fossil fuels. I'm like, does Elon have a gas powered car coming out soon that we don't know about? What's going on?
I think
I'm sure he gets some cabinet position, some bullshit like that.
For what though? He doesn't
close to the
support
president,
any. He doesn't support.
I don't think
renewable
Elon. I don't
energy.
think Elon.
Period.
I don't think he gives a shit.
He just is having
Elon is
fun.
a money. I mean, again, this is like the whole thing of like the fucking facade and this fucking. I'm struggling with the music, but the idea that Elon is Tony Stark. He's not. He's a guy who made a bunch of money off of PayPal and then buys things and then and knows what he's understands. But he's not the guy designing the thing. He's not the guy designing the battery. He's well aware that everybody wants an electric car that's smart and is going to keep going that way, and he can go the other way and play it and probably sell Teslas to those people eventually too.
It really all stems from his. Elon's got a lot of kids, and he's a horrible father to all of them. But it all stems from his trans daughter, who became trans, and he feels like she fell victim to the woke mind virus. And the Republicans don't like that. And I really feel like, back when we see him first buying Twitter and him saying, in order to be fair, we gotta. I'm gonna hate the right as much as I hate the left.
Yeah.
And then it just slowly goes away. And I feel like a lot of his feelings have been sort of steeped in there. Like if we were to do some sort of weird, imagine if he went to I'm thinking like Doctor Strange going into his brain, or like Wanda, kind of like what's going on in there, that it would all stem from that, that one interview, which is just so disgusting to watch him be like, my son died that day, is what he said. It's like, dude, that's crazy to say. Like, contrast that to an amazing interview you see with
Dwayne Wade,
and Marlon Wayans. Marlon Wayans on Shannon Sharp's podcast, and him and Marlon Wayans being like, that's your baby. You don't do that to your babies.
Yeah,
he's like, I'm embarrassed that it took me 1 week to become accepting of my trans child. Like that's your baby. That's your blood. You accept them. You nurture and you take care of them. Like, what the fuck is your problem to just say like, my son died that day, I don't know them anymore? Like, fucking what a disgusting evil shithead, man.
And you said and then over time it's like he took over Twitter 2022?
Yeah, 2022.
2 years?
Didn't take very long.
We're talking 2 years to see that sharp of a decline from already starting from it's not like he was great in 2022, immediately. I mean, look what happened to Twitter, right? Immediately, look how many people quit Twitter because of that, or moved on, all that stuff. It's like, man.
There is a thought process that a lot of support that Trump gets is because they're hoping that Trump will pardon them when they are eventually convicted for something. Because
Oh, it's a possibility.
Yeah.
But I think some people in live chat are saying he's promised him a position and giving him some potential huge tax breaks. I mean, that's got to be all it is, right? But I just don't understand how you would assume he would do that. I guess also, what the hell am I talking about? He's the richest man on the planet. What does he care? It's probably just like, hey, this is a long gamble. If it doesn't pay off, he's still worth
it doesn't matter.
$287 billion. So what the hell do you care?
Yeah, no.
But
this
still,
is just about trying to protect.
I just don't understand how you would be like, you're talking about a person who has a legacy of buddying with people and then throwing them under the bus when it suits him. So I don't understand what Elon's like long play is here, because at some point Trump's going to screw him over.
I mean, he's a bootlicker.
Like,
you know what I mean? Like, and the buying Twitter, I think he thought was going to make him a hero, and it did to his
it definitely made him a hero to some people.
Fan base, right? But like, it was very much an already unpopular person buying something thinking it would make them popular, and it just made people hate him more. And then he's like, you hate me, then I'll fucking go over here and do this. He's slime. He's just trying to make it work or survive. I have multiple tabs open. I want to finish these fascism signs so you realize, of course, Donald Trump is a fascist, and I need you not to vote for him. 6, obsession with national security. 7, religion and government intertwined. Ding, ding, ding. Number 8, corporate power protected. Ding, ding, ding. Number 9, labor power suppressed. Ding, ding, ding. 10, disdain for intellectual and the arts. Man, he hates Taylor Swift. Number 11, obsession with crime and punishment. Wow, don't even get me started. And then number 12, rampant cronyism and corruption. How many of the people from his first campaign / tenure at the White House are on charges, convicted? Don't even get me started on Rudolph Giuliani. We'll go back to trying to get through all these policies because, of course, Beast needed them. Beast needed me to explain, which I was going to do it anyways. Why, of course, you shouldn't vote for Donald Trump, should vote for Kamala Harris. It's not all about one issue. It's not about Trump just being a horrible person.
And I'm sure I'm sure Beast has changed their mind.
They left their
Beast stopped watching 20 minutes. Beast just popped in to do that comment. That was it.
Ms. Harris supports an active global role for the United States, including in NATO and other military alliances, and wants to continue to send military aid to Ukraine. She has not given many details on her policies towards China, but has said she wants to protect the United States against China's economic practices without cutting ties entirely. Mr. Trump has criticized alliances like NATO and suggested that he would encourage Russia to invade a member country if he didn't think the country was paying enough for its defense. He has indicated that he is reluctant to send further military aid to Ukraine and has said he wants to, quote, eliminate the United States' economic dependence on China.
He loves worshiping Xi as well. Like it. I never really know what side he falls on, because one second it's I love Putin, we talk all the time, and the next
friends.
It's like I would have been the toughest on Putin.
Yeah.
Like,
I told him not to go do anything while I was in office, and then he's like, that's what yeah, it's very strange.
I punch him in the fucking face.
Can you imagine, like, not that I would ever really want this, but could you imagine if you knew Putin, like, privately, and you were like, what do you think of this guy? Like, wouldn't you want to know what Putin thinks? Because Putin has to be like, this guy's a fucking dumbass.
He's
like
a tool.
piece of
Yeah,
shit.
he's a tool.
100%. Everyone thinks that. God
Like,
bless that
there's-
time when he was speaking at the UN and everybody laughed at him. And
Yeah.
it even caught him off guard. He's like, I didn't expect that. That was the best part. You fucking idiot. Healthcare. Ms. Harris wants to make permanent the Biden administration's expanded subsidies for insurance under the Affordable Care Act, broaden direct negotiations between Medicare and pharmaceutical companies on drug prices, and provide Medicare coverage for long-term at-home care. Mr. Trump, who tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act and then took a series of steps that weakened it, has said he still wants to replace the ACA, but that he does not have a plan for how to do so. He closed a federal pandemic preparedness office and defied scientific guidelines in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. Worth pointing out, I heard on NPR today that I think in the past 48 hours, maybe a little bit more, Trump has started saying that he is supporting long-term at-home healthcare for Medicare as well. But the rest is still there, and we all have a short fucking memory of how bad it was in 2020 when he was talking about fucking taking horse medicine, injecting people with bleach,
yeah.
fucking being and downplaying it.
I mean, come on. COVID.
You lived through this if you're
Like,
voting.
It's we were at home in an unprecedented pandemic, something that I legitimately never thought I would live through in my life. And here we are now, having lived through it happening and still continuing to see the ramifications, to some extent having lost people, whether it's us at this table or people watching. Somebody here was negatively affected, whether by death or even just by life-changing health issues by COVID. And Trump handled that all the way that he did. Like, I'm not saying that someone else would have fixed it But I am saying we know how Trump handled it, and it was
would
horrible.
Would Hillary or a Democrat or another I mean, God bless, if we could have had a Mitt Romney or a John McCain, you know what I mean? Would they have told you not to listen to scientists? Would they have turned, like, Dr. Fauci had to get, like,
it's wild that we
at-home protection from security? What the fuck is going on?
It's wild that he made Fauci like a villain. And I especially loved the posts and people reading into interviews saying, like, look at that, they were playing it by ear. They didn't know what they were doing. It's like, well, yeah, this was like a brand new thing that, so what if they told you had to mask up? Like that's the worst that it was.
It's taking away my freedom.
Yeah, it could have been lessened by such a huge margin, I think, had people just followed what they were supposed to do a lot earlier, but instead it became a political tool to say, like, no, I'm a Republican, I'm not going to mask up, and I am going to go to bars, and I will cough on people. And it's like, what just, I don't know, just asinine. It's wild.
And then the amount of videos you would see or stories you would hear from people who were so anti-masks, anti-vaccines, dying in hospitals. And the videos you would see of their last words, or nearly last words, being like, I wish I had taken the vaccine, I wish I had listened. And that just being met with fucking a stone wall from these people who just don't want to listen. It's the flu. It was just another flu.
Here's a real grim take that I'm gonna steer us into.
Oh God!
And it's just, it's a statement. Nobody has to respond, and it's gonna be a weird thing. So everybody strap in. How are these people gonna be when he dies eventually?
How are which people going to be? I'm sorry.
Like
the MAGAs.
MAGA.
Oh, how are they gonna be?
I think I'm talking about just like all of Republicans. Where
I think the rational, fucking spineless Republicans who are just along for the ride here, trying to can maintain power and be there, will breathe a sigh of relief, and I think they'll be able to go back a little bit towards it.
I think they want to go back to status quo. I think.
And then the MAGA Republicans,
because I fully see that becoming like two different parties. Like,
I would like to think that when it's all said and done, the rational, spineless Republicans who have not stood up to this and have just accepted what it is to try to maintain power, right?
Ted Cruz, all those.
Exactly.
Idiots.
They'll go back to being a more normalish GOP, even though you can't come back all the way, obviously. And then I think the MAGA people who will be in the fold that are the crazies, I think hopefully get washed out over time.
Yeah, they don't have the stuff.
Yeah.
Trump has the stuff.
The fact that there isn't a clear successor. You know what I mean? That we're dumping Pence. We're going with J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance, from an outsider's perspective, has not risen to the occasion here. That he can't order a fucking donut without being laughed at. Like, you haven't stepped up to be like, I am Trump Jr. And again, I think it's because even J.D. Vance knows that he's a rational, spineless Republican who's like, even one of the things he said. No, he's the one who gets pressed in the interviews, and he's the one who gives up the ground. He doesn't lie all over and over and over again. He eventually is like, well, like today with the thing like, listen, was it really racist, the Puerto Rican thing and the black thing at the Madison Square Garden? I don't know. I didn't watch it. He said, I didn't hear. I'm like, what the fuck? How did you not hear? I didn't do it. But we as a country need to stop being so sensitive. We need to learn to take a joke. Thank you, everybody. What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Jesus. We got 3 lefts here from the New York Times. I want to get it out of here and then get y'all home. Immigration. Ms. Harris denounced many of the Trump administration's immigration policies, but has endorsed President Biden's decisions to restore some of them, such as restrictions on asylum seekers, as illegal boarding crossings have reached record levels.
Hannibal Lecter.
She has tried to address root causes for migration by securing private funding for development projects in Latin America. Mr. Trump enacted sweeping anti-immigration policies when he was president, including separating migrant children from their parents. If elected again, he wants to round up millions of undocumented immigrants and detain them in camps before deporting them en masse. Again, where do you want to fall in this? This is one I think that there is a lot of wiggle room in terms of how do you line up with these candidates or whatever. Rounding people up and putting them in camps, generally not the best. And we can even look at like Guantanamo Bay and bring it to a Democratic side of what's going on and how that continued on in the Obama administration. Like, I'm just saying this, come on. I fully believe that Donald Trump does not think these people are human. I think that Kamala Harris and going into this, like, You can agree or not agree on what this is and the illegal boarding crosses and migrant. There's stuff in there to critique. There's stuff in there to disagree with for sure. But the way, as you Hannibal Lecter, the way Trump talks about these people, he's not treating them with the basic human decency.
Yeah, and also just all the stats out there just point to the drugs being brought in are from people in America that are drug dealers. It's not Mexican families trying to find safety or just find a new life or that are exiled or just trying to flee, from danger or whatever. Yeah. They have really successfully gotten into their brains that these illegal aliens are coming into our country and they're going to come after you.
I mean, they're going to take our jobs. Wasn't working.
Yeah.
That wasn't scary enough. It wasn't extreme enough. So now it's like all this other insane shit. And like to Greg's point about like not seeing them as people, it's like, yeah, it is just moving things around on a board to be able to power yourself up and be like, we have the numbers, we have these things. And it's like, no, they are people. They're people that need help in many, many cases. And yeah, this is another example of looking at both these where I'm just like, God, I don't want to choose one, but I know which one I don't choose.
Yeah.
A
big one for a lot of people, Israel and Gaza. Ms. Harris has said that Israel has a right to defend itself against Hamas and that the United States should continue to send it weapons while calling for a ceasefire and putting somewhat greater emphasis than President Biden has on the humanitarian crisis that Israel's bombardment and invasion have caused in Gaza. She supports a two-state solution. Mr. Trump has sought to position himself as a champion of Israel, and as president, he took actions that favored the country. He supports Israel in its war in Gaza and has condemned pro-Palestinian demonstrators in the United States. But he has also urged Israel to, quote-unquote, finish up the war because it is losing support. He said recently that he doubted a two-state solution was possible. I think when we talk about this, to people who are like-minded with us in terms of being liberal, this is always the lightning rod in terms of like, I'm not going to vote for Kamala. I'm not voting in this election, I should say, for the people we talk to that'll be riled up about this. Or this, I shouldn't say riled up. That sounds like I'm trivializing it. If this is their biggest issue, I won't vote for the Harris ticket because of this. It needs to be stated that there's a genocide happening. It needs to be stated that Israel is far overreacted to the events of October 7th, right? This is the one that pops up the most. And so again, we're back to this is for many people a lesser than two evils, right? This, that, the other. This is the one that stands out the most, I know, for people, and I know it's the hardest for so many people.
For good reason.
1,000%. Oh, yeah, no, to be clear, like, fucking stop. Like, what the fuck? What the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong, is the Hamas attack on Israel, holy shit, terrorism. But then to use that now is like basically the final thing to break the dam, and I know I'm powering through since like 1942, the Palestinian War.
Very complicated.
Like, I understand this, but I mean, like, it's been more than a year now. You look at these maps of them bombing Gaza and like all the red dots and the thing. The fucking UN. I pulled it aside in my thing, right? Sorry. This is the UN speaking. What Israeli forces are doing in besieged North Gaza cannot be allowed to continue, said Joyce Masuya, acting under Secretary General for Humanitarian Efforts and UN Emergency Relief Coordinator, in a statement posted to X. Hospitals have been hit, healthcare workers detained, and first responders prevented from rescuing people trapped under the rubble, she noted. Quote, shelters have been emptied and burned down. Families have been separated, and men and boys taken away by the truckload, she added. According to reports, hundreds of Palestinians have been killed since Israeli security forces renewed their offensive in northern Gaza earlier this month. Tens of thousands of people have been displaced again. Quote, the entire population of North Gaza is at risk of dying, Ms. Masuya warned.
Yeah, this is by far the worst one and the easiest win that could be had, because you ask any American and nobody wants to send tax dollars to wars overseas. That's just like a general thing that a lot of people agree with, especially when it is funding the genocide of Palestinians. We see these horrific videos. We know the numbers of all of these, the videos that scroll down of the people's names and the age of them, and it takes so long to get to the age of one, because there are so many children that are under the age of one that have been murdered. and slaughtered by this maniacal, evil, disgusting Bibi Netanyahu, and it's so disgusting when I think about American politics and how in the bag we are, how in their pocket, in people's pockets that we are. When you see people in the UN meetings, when Netanyahu goes up and everybody walks out, compared to America, standing ovations. Yes, we don't like anti-Semitism either. It's like, dog, it's not anti-Semitism. It is not wanting to support terrorism.
This isn't about being against the Jewish people.
This is
Jewish faith.
This is just straight up fucking terrorism, man. And like, I totally agree with a lot of people's thoughts of like, when you've been pushed down for decades and decades and decades, and a retaliation happens, loss of life is always a bad thing. But to then, like, you were up 40-0, and then they came back with 5 points, and then you kept on running up the score on them in just the most, catastrophic ways. And it's not a war, because when one side can just cut off the water supply and cut off the power to the other side, that tells you that it's not really a fair fight, and it hasn't been forever. And these people have been oppressed for decades and decades. And I think one of the best sort of tweets to sort of encapsulate how all of this really, really nets out was when Palestinians are just crying for their lives and wanting to live and wanting to survive. And on the other side, I believe it was, I'm blanking on the name of the supermodel that decided she was no longer going to model because they were supporting Israel. And the whole sort of argument on the other side was like, well, who's the next supermodel going to be? Who's going to replace this person? And it's like, these are the two conflicts that you all are dealing with. One side is deciding, well, we're replacing that person because she no longer wants to be on this side because she's anti-Israel or whatever. She's an anti-Semite. And the other side is just trying to survive and not die. And like, it's wild to think about. Can you bring up those stats again, Roger? Because did they show the life expectancy? Like, it is just, it's depressingly low.
So for an audio listener, where is this? Is this New York Times?
No, this is Al Jazeera.
Okay, Al Jazeera has a graphic we're looking at. Israel's war on Gaza, the latest figures, October 7th, 2023 through October 27th, 2024. Israel. Okay, I see how we're doing this. So in Israel, at least 1,139 people have been killed. In Gaza, at least 42,924 have been killed, including nearly 1,700 children, and more than 10,000 are missing.
17,000
children.
My apologies. What did I say?
And more than, you said 1,700.
16,000. Oh, I apologize. I tried to round up to 17,000, but I failed.
That's okay.
And then Israel injured, nearly 9,000 injured. Palestine, at least 100,000 plus injured. And they have occupied West Bank numbers here too. At least 762 killed, including 166 children. At least 6,250 injured.
And it all just comes down to lobbyists and money. And like, I don't think any of this stuff would exist. Any of this stuff would be happening. There would be no support from the U.S. had people not had financial interests in whatever.
Oh yeah, we don't usually give a shit about people murdering each other over there. Over there being outside of our outside of America and outside of what the English speaking East.
And to be fair, there's places in America where we don't give a shit about people killing each other.
Great point. I mean, we don't give a shit about Puerto Rico, and then you fucking don't get me started.
Yeah, it's just. It's one of those things that I feel like is such an easy win unless you are in their pockets, and then even then it's like I am still voting for Kamala because I feel like with some of the more progressive people in Congress that they will hopefully be able to change the tides, and that's like the closest I can get to a moral victory.
I mean, we're back to what Tim's talking about earlier with like the buses.
I exactly. This is the perfect example of the bus. I think this is the example, this election, of the bus analogy there. But on top of that, like, this is again for me doubling down on like, we need this to, Kamala needs to win by as much as possible in every way as possible. Then once she's there, I do believe that people holding her feet to the fire and the amount of anger that people have towards these statements and towards this stance, will be listened to. What will happen from that, we'll have to see. But I do believe that, to Andy's point of all the people surrounding her, like, I don't think that this is the end of that. And I think that a lot more needs to happen, and there is a lot more like putting faith in somebody there. But you look at the other end of that, and it's like, it's literally the opposite. It is not just, there's no chance. There's no chance at all.
It's no chance there, along with losing a lot more rights in our country as well. And like,
yeah, to me, this one's a net, like, I hate to say it, but this is a net neutral. Like, they're so closely aligned on this subject that it shouldn't even factor into your decision.
Yeah.
Because what would be the point of it? Right.
The stuff
like,
that
I don't want to disagree with Tim, but I don't believe that even if elected, Kamala would, I don't think she'll soften the language on that. I don't think she'll do anything with, to be hard on Israel. I just don't think that either candidate's going to do that.
You know, I mean, this, the current administration of Biden, right, is finally like, and I'm using finally loosely, but like shaking their finger at them. Like, well, maybe we're going to think about you know what I mean? Like UN, NATO, all these other people are like, what the fuck is going on? Like everyone crying out that this is
think they're going to have to. With where we're at here, it's like, this is so ridiculously bad that there's this stupid election we got to get through just to be able to actually deal with real matters. And I feel like that's like, I hope I'm not wrong, Nick. Let me put it that way.
Oh, I hope you're not wrong either.
This
has been a tough subject for a very long time for every president that's come in the last.
But we're in a
like,
different
30, 40
place
years.
now. Like, we're in a place now that it's like, it's no longer like, oh, it's been going on forever. It's like, what's happening right now is like, something needs to happen right now. Like,
in order for it not to be the end of it.
My concern is that it's back to being so similar with Trump, where there's so many lies you can't stop them all. It's the fact that I was listening to the news today. I was listening to NPR today on the way in. I forget it was up first or if it would, but it doesn't matter. And they were talking again about now North Korea maybe sending troops to to Russia to help fight this Ukraine war, and it's like the Ukraine war is still going on.
Oh yeah, don't forget about that one.
It's just fucking white noise right now.
About that
I
one.
remember being at Dice, getting ready to host.
The stats on that.
That happened, and it felt like the world stopped. It felt like we were about to go to World War III, and now it's like the third fucking story on Up First. It was like, oh yeah, and then North Korea might be sending their South Korea's flipping the fuck out about it, or Ukraine's flipping the fuck out about it, but then they had the thing of like NATO or the UN being like, they've sent a memo saying they don't agree with this, and it's like, that's where we're at. Then you have Israel, right, of course, fighting or invading Palestine here. Then you have them also doing this Beirut bombing going after Hezbollah. It's like, the more stuff like that pops up, the more it just becomes white noise to like whatever, and it's like, what the fuck? I digress. I want to get you all home. I'm sorry. The final one on this New York Times one, LGBTQ rights. Ms. Harris supports legislation to ban discrimination against LGBTQ people in education, healthcare, housing, and other areas. And she has condemned state laws restricting gender transition care, sports participation, and public bathroom use for transgender people. She has supported LGBTQ rights for more than 2 decades and began officiating at same-sex weddings 2 decades ago. Mr. Trump wants to ban gender transition care for transgender youth, investigate hospitals and drug companies that are involved in such care, bar trans girls and women from girls and women's sports, and cut funding from schools he says promote, quote, radical gender ideology. As president, he weakened LGBTQ anti-discrimination protections and barred transgender people from the military. This is obviously, I shouldn't say obviously. This is, for me, one of the biggest, where I really fully believe, as MAGA, Trump, the Republican Party continue to demonize trans people so much. If they get back and they're allowed to run with this agenda, not only are they going to do that, they're going to fucking come for the gays. Like I think they will continue to turn inward on that as they push more and more to a marriage is a man and a woman. This is what it is, yada, yada. And strip back rights, whether it be marriage equality, whether it be the ability for same-sex couples to adopt. Like, this is one of the ones for me of like, you got to put your foot fucking down. I understand not agreeing with Kamala, wanting more from the Democratic Party on a number of these issues. This is about maintaining what we have and hopefully getting a little bit more. This will be a step backwards in a way that will be fundamentally destructive to what America is right now.
I mean, pulling back on anti-discrimination policies. What Andy's talking about, to put up the numbers and like, don't say who the person is. Like, what? Like, how could you want that? How? Like, it just feels like it just, when you don't apply those words to like an enemy that you've created and you just apply it to anything, that is, you should not discriminate. Like, I feel like everybody should like feel that way. And if you don't, we're talking about something different here. And I feel like that's what we're talking about here when it comes to Trump. Like, that's when you're just clearly saying what it is, the facts of what are actually there, not just like the sentiments and statements being made to kind of like build this persona and like build the little wins here, little wins there to add up to a bigger win. It's like all the ists are there, and that's insane. That should not be the goal for anybody. We should be trying to be better to each other. And if you're not trying to be better to someone, I don't know, man. I don't get it.
Here. Ladies, gentlemen, and NBs, that's another episode of the Kind of Funny podcast. Remember, each and every week we run you through whatever we're talking about and hang out with you. If you like that, please pick up the Kind of Funny membership. Of course, for $10, you could be here watching live, hanging out, chatting along with us. You, of course, could get the shows ad-free, get the ability to watch them live as we record them, and, of course, get my daily vlog and podcast series known as Greg Way. No bucks tossed away, no big deal. YouTube.com/kindoffunnygames podcast services around the globe. Again, I'm asking you the personal favor of next week if you're in America, or if you're voting early to vote for Kamala Harris. It would mean a lot to me. I really do think this is yet another turning point in our country. And I, just like you, am sick of living through historical events. I would love to just go back to talking about video games and not have to worry about
Also,
it.
please vote in your local elections as well.
Yes, 100%.
Please, that matters too.
Don't just...
Your state stuff and your city stuff really matters, everyone.
100%. Until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.